Good evening, council, staff. May I have a mover and seconder to call the meeting to order, please? And Councillors Fisher and Thompson, that the special meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater of November 13th, 2023 come to order at 5 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Councillor, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? And seeing none, I will now turn to Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to members of council. This evening marks the beginning of the Township's 2024 budget and business plan deliberations. This evening's meeting has been set aside specifically for our service partners, including the Springwater Public Library, the Severn Sound Environmental Association, the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, the Barrie Physician Recruitment, as well as South Georgian Bay Physician Recruitment, as well as the Elmville BIA. Our service partners have been allotted specific time to present their 2024 budget request for council to review and to further ask questions for clarification. Just at a high level, South Georgian Bay Physician Recruitment is requesting $4,000, which is similar to prior years. Barrie Physician Recruitment is requesting $8,000, which is also similar to prior years. There is also no increase to the BIA levy. The NBCA is seeking an operating levy request in the amount of $215,958 and an asset management levy request in the amount of $9,955. Both of those requests are Category 1 requests, and that equates to an increase of $5,593 or 2.5%. The SSEA is seeking an operating budget request of $95,090 plus $12,948 for the Severn Sound project. Overall, that is an increase of $11,268, which is 11.6%. The Springwater Public Library is seeking an operating budget request in the amount of $945,846. That's an increase of $41,310 or 4.6%. In addition, the library is seeking for 2 program changes, one for a community services librarian and the second for a strategic plan. The police services contract, although not here today, have provided for an operating budget on the amount of $2,424,238. This is actually a decrease from last year's budget request of $40,589 or 1.6%. Thank you, and I'd like to turn it back over to the mayor.
And thank you. And at this time, I would be calling on our Dr. Galinsky and Brittany Cook to make their presentation. Thank you. And I just ask that you come forward, and if you just pull the mics in closely, you can have a seat and join us.
Physician Recruitment and Credentialing Specialist for Georgian Bay General Hospital and the community. I apologize. It seems that Dr. Galinsky has not made it yet. That's okay. I will get started without him and try and answer any questions that may come my way. Just waiting for the presentation to display. Perfect. Okay, we can advance the slide, please. So just an overshot of primary care in Ontario. Whoops. So in Ontario, 161,000 visits, 75,000 specialist visits, about 60,000 x-rays, 17,000 ED visits.
Wonderful. Thank you. And we are a little ahead of schedule. So that's not on you. That's us. It's not often that we were ahead of schedule. So we were just going to keep rolling with it. Thank you for joining us.
For the primary care in Ontario. So yeah, we see 17,000 ED visits, 7,000 CT, MRI scans, 3,000 inpatients, and then 130 hip and knee replacements You can advance the slide.
Can we take yeah. I'm sorry, everyone. My apologies. Jeff Gillespie. I was here last year. I think we were virtual, and I just want to put a little different spin on it and provide a bit of kind of bigger picture as to why I think our recruitment locally is so important. This is sort of a slide to describe family medicine and why we think it's so important. Solid primary care in the community provides better health outcomes more equitably and at lower cost overall. So that's sort of our purpose and why we're, I think, taking this so passionately for the community and for our hospital at GBGH. So next slide there, please. Challenges locally. I think we all know both staffing our hospital has been an ongoing challenge, from the emergency department to specialist recruitment to hospitalists for the inpatient care. So those are kind of our big three challenges lately. When we spoke a year ago, we were focusing on emergency medicine. And we were successful. We got through that summer. We have had a fully staffed emergency department over the last 18 months now. So we got through that crisis. Our current needs are mostly in the inpatient realm. So hospitalists, so family doctors doing inpatient care, and our consultant recruitment is where we're focusing at the current time. Next slide, please. Yeah. I think we missed one. Again, just kind of big picture. Many Ontarians without a family physician. So this is some of the latest data that I could find, and it's going to get more and more challenging. And then the next slide, just some more recent articles in the media, some from the springtime, some from most recently as of October, where provincially this family physician shortage has been recognized over and over again. Our situation in North Simcoe is really no different than it is across the rest of the province, especially as we get further away from the GTA. So we're competing for a small number of graduates for the same types of communities across the province. So that makes our job even more challenging. Next slide, please. Again, just some statistics. Bigger picture still, this is a national problem. And this slide too just speaks to the challenges in recruitment. The communities are looking for physicians from an ever decreasing pool of family medicine graduates, where family medicine isn't as popular as it once was, and the percentage of Canadian medical graduates choosing family medicine unfortunately continues to decrease over time. And at the same time, the average age of our family physicians, both nationally, provincially, and locally, is increasing. Next slide, please. Again, this is another slide I borrowed from some of our work with the universities. Over 1 in 5 Canadians without a family doctor, and 4 in 10 have an older physician that is considering retirement in the next few years. Next slide. Locally, I think we showed something similar to this last year. We have an increasing aging physician population as well. So again, we have those red bars on the right side that demonstrate the aging population of our physicians. This has, I think, 2 main implications for our recruitment plans. These physicians historically have had large practices, seeing many patients per day, and they're approaching retirement. At the same time, we found our newer physicians, my younger colleagues, aren't seeing as many patients, are having smaller rosters. So we're needing 2, sometimes even 3 to replace some of my older colleagues. So our successes have been in succession planning, in kind of finding new recruits to take over existing practices. So we've had some success there, but our work isn't done. And we've got several in the near future that are hoping to retire locally. Next slide, please. I don't know if you want to speak to this
absolutely.
one. Yeah.
So our focus for 2023, 2024 really is around targeting international medical graduates. So in the spring, CPSO, the College of Physicians of Ontario, launched some new legislation around hiring international medical grads, specifically those that have trained in the US, UK, and Ireland. They now no longer require supervision when coming back to Canada. So really part of our focus this year is to try and target specifically Canadians, as so you may know, so many go abroad to train, targeting those Canadians and bringing them back home to practice back in Canada. So that's kind of one of our main focuses, education. So providing physicians with education opportunities, mentorship, things like that, just to try and entice them and bring them into our community and get them to stay on long term. Targeted marketing campaigns, and then obviously community partnerships. So working with our community and our partners to really try and emphasize the need for physicians in our area. I just wanted to highlight another challenge from a recruitment perspective that we're facing right now is around accommodations. We're competing with so many different communities, and a lot of communities are now offering 100% coverage for physicians accommodations. Currently, we kind of, depending on the physician, we cover 50%, and then in rare cases, 100%. But that's where majority of our budget goes to, is providing accommodation coverage for locum physicians in our community.
Next slide.
Next slide.
Before we wrap up, I just wanted to, again, I think we could have spoke about this last year. How does our recruitment kind of North Simcoe, Midland, Penetanguishene, Tay, Tiny, Springwater, how do we fit into Springwater? And I think some of our colleagues from Bay Area are up next on the agenda tonight. And I think it's our provision of care for that, the northern part of your geographical area. Those residents in Elmvale, they really see GBGH as their home hospital. And that's why we're here tonight. I think it's just to appeal to you for your continued support. Thank you for your support last year. Our work isn't done, and I think it's that northern part of your area that really see Midland and GBGH as their home hospitals. So yeah, thank you, and happy to speak to any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation, Councillor. Are there any questions at this time? Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Director Radigan. Can you please speak to the amount of $4,000 again, how we got to that dollar amount? Maybe that was by request. Understanding, I believe last year was something similar, but just so, again, any of our residents, again, representing the Elmvale community, I would completely agree with yourself. That absolutely is the hospital I know my family calls home. So how do we get there? And that'd be my first part of my question.
Director Radigan?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Garwood. Based on history, I believe it has always been a $4,000 request. I would have to turn it over to, I apologize for your name.
I'm Jeff.
Jeff, to further explain the actual request for the $4,000, or if CAO Schmidt may have anything further in terms of a history on that amount.
Dr. Galinsky?
Sure. Yes, that has been our historical amount, at least over the last several years that I can recall. Initially, when we were reaching out to our other partner municipalities, we started on a kind of a dollar per resident number. So that was sort of a ballpark. So when we're speaking to Midland and Penetanguishene, our ask is a little bit larger. And so that's roughly where that 4,000 came from. And it's obviously a rough estimate. We wanted to keep it a reasonable request. So yes, that's based historically and sort of that rough per $1 per resident number. Yeah.
Thank you. Follow on.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and thank you, Director Radigan, for that information. So Dr. Galinsky, seeing that number, again, that $4,000 has been something relatively consistent, understanding this is only my second budget up here, so that's why I asked that question. Also respecting that you wanted it to be a reasonable number. At the same time, it's obviously a very important topic. So do you find that in today's climate with inflation the way that it is and the cost of everything rising, that that dollar amount is something that is still useful? Because again, when we're putting any taxpayer dollars into anything, I want to see those funds being utilized well. And if we can support in a greater way, I think that's the time to have that conversation now.
Dr. Galinsky?
Yes, so definitely we need your support, and we thank you for your support in the past. I would agree with the suggestion that the costs of as Brittany mentioned of bringing recruits to our area, the costs of relocation, the costs of some short-term support for housing, all those costs keep going up year after year. And the competitiveness, I think, as Brittany suggested, with other similar communities as well has shifted, and other communities are really supporting their new locum physicians, their new physicians in an even greater way. So yes, I think an increased support would be appreciated.
Any further questions or comments from council? And seeing none, I have mover and seconder for the presentation to receive the presentation. Councillor Garwood and Alexander, that the presentation from the South Georgian Bay physician recruitment regarding the 2024 budget request be received, and that the 2024 South Georgian Bay physician recruitment budget request in the amount of $4,000 be referred to the November 22nd, 2023 budget session for further consideration. All those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Garwood, we have 15 minutes before the next. Would you be able to do your BIA update in this time? So this time I'll call on Councillor Garwood to provide an update on behalf of the Elmvale BIA. I wasn't suggesting to take all 15 minutes. I was kidding.
I would gladly take 2 minutes, Mayor Coughlin. Might be a bit longer than that, but anyway, thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I am here this evening representing the Elmvale BIA, understanding that the BIA's request, if we want to call it that, because technically it's not a request, it's a levy that is taxed to our local businesses. But I also thought it was appropriate to provide a bit of an update as to what the BIA has been working on, what our foundation is, who our members are, and where we see ourselves going a bit in the future. So the Elmvale BIA is an association of businesses and property owners who work together to support growth and development in the Elmvale area. Established in 2012, the BIA works with its members, council, and other stakeholders to ensure that downtown Elmvale continues to be a dynamic area for great shopping, dining, professional services, cultural opportunities, etc. A volunteer board of management governs the BIA and membership approved by this council. We also have, of course, myself as a council representative and a member of staff that acts as a liaison between the BIA and the municipality. Our goals. So our membership is passionate about their downtown business community. The BIA works in partnership with, again, many local businesses and stakeholders to ensure our continued success in the future. Our focuses are on not only, again, the successful economy within the Elmvale community, but beautification of our community, revitalization and maintenance, marketing and promotion, social events, business recruitment and retention, and communication. Our current board is made up by all members of the business community, plus again, myself. Our president is Crystal Graveson. Our vice president is Jason Schell. Myself as the council representative. Our treasurer is Sue Gilson, and our marketing director is Brenda Stanley, along with various director positions as well, along with our Township of Springwater staff representative, Planner Belcourt. Over the summer months, mainly is the main focus for events in the community. The BIA continues to support events like Music in the Park, which happens often on summers, on Saturdays in the summer. The BIA also was a big supporter of the Springwater Farmers Market, our local festivals like the Fall Fair and the Maple Syrup Festival, along with monthly initiatives on social media throughout the community, pumpkin carving, snowman building, etc., throughout the year to keep things exciting. The BIA also invests a lot of money into radio advertisement campaigns for our local businesses. You might have heard those on various stations, excuse me, throughout the various times of the year, primarily in the winter months around the holiday season as well. The BIA and its structure and how things are funded, and understanding we are here to talk about budget. Each year, the BIA collects a levy total of $21,060. That is made up of $270 per property on the final property tax bill, and there are 78 properties included within the catchment area of the BIA. The BIA also offers associate memberships, which are non-voting memberships for members that fall outside of that area. That is a $75 charge per year, roughly, and that is also included in the total BIA budget. So when we talk about what's next, understanding that, like many groups, it is a small group with a lot on the radar. When we think of our future in the BIA, we think of really three or two main words, and that's awareness and growth. The big thing is we're trying to ensure that our business community is fully aware of what the BIA has been and what it wants to do in the future, but then also continue to not only grow the BIA, but as we grow the BIA and continue to make investment into this organization, we can better support our local businesses as well. So the BIA does have a lot of exciting things that they do want to work towards. Again, we are a small group of 6 or 7, so sometimes things get tricky in that sense, but there's a lot of folks there that put in a lot of effort, and I know that levy goes a very far distance when it comes to this group operating on that $21,000 budget each year. So anyway, that is my couple-minute overview. As Mayor Coughlin indicated, I didn't use the full 15, but if anyone has any questions about the Annabelle BIA, I'm happy to answer them at any time.
Thank you, Councillor Garwood. Members of council, do you have any questions about the BIA? Seeing none, thank you very much. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the update from Councillor Garwood and the BIA, please? I have Councillors Moore and Alexander that the year in review, an update from Councillor Garwood regarding the Elmvale Business Improvement Area be received. All those in favor? And that has carried. And close. Do we have Miss Maxwell and Dr. Murdoch available? Okay, that's no problem. We are ahead of schedule here. I don't know if you want. All right. Maybe at this time, Director Radigan, will we be able to do the OPP, the policing update? Is that enough time? I don't want to rush you. Yes, okay. Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to members of council. I do apologize. This is not going to be a lengthy update either. As I had mentioned earlier, the police services contract has provided for an operating budget of about $2.4 million. And this year we are seeing a decrease of about $40,500, which is about 1.6%. Earlier this year, you would have seen potentially 2 CIPs ago, we did provide council with their recent request of the 2024 budget. And within that, they do outline how they do bill the Township of Springwater as well as their other contracted services. So that includes a base service fee, call for service, overtime, prisoner transportation, and accommodation and cleaning fees. That is made up based on our total number of properties, and they do calculate out a cost per property. We are seeing a reduction in the calls for service in 2024 compared to 2023, as well as a reduction in overtime costs as well. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Councillor, are there any questions at this time, Council? Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Director Radigan. The formula changed a wee bit because now it's based on calls for service and those other items that you indicated. You did say that on the base that they presented to us, that there was a cost per household. I just was curious if you could give us that particular number, what it is. I know it's going to fluctuate based on the number of calls for service. It's nice to hear that they're down.
Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Deputy Mayor Cabral. If you just give me some moment, I can pull it up for you.
Thank you. Director Radigan.
Thank you. Mayor Coughlin, through you to members of council, the cost per property on the base service is $165.59. And that is based on our property counts. So you take that cost per property and multiply it by our total properties, which is $8,700 to come up with our base service.
Follow on.
Thank you. Would it be fair to say then that the other component that made up the policing costs was based on calls for service? So we're going to be behind on that on a pretty regular basis then, because we can't project into the future. Yes, go ahead.
Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to members of council. The calls for service is based on our proportionate share of calls based on our municipal portion. And that also has a cost per property of about $100.26. And the prisoner transportation is actually based on a per property cost as well, which is $1.12. The accommodation and cleaning services is also a per property cost, which is $4.90. The overtime cost is also on a per property, which is $9.37.
Deputy Cabral.
Thank you. So it's 265, 275, roughly 200 and I'm sorry, am I getting close to the number? And the year previous to them changing their formula, I believe we were paying just over $200 per property. Is that correct, or am I off a bit? I think it was around $216, $218.
Director Radigan. I guess this year's current total per property, and then if there's in comparison to years prior.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Deputy Mayor Cabral. The total cost per property in 2024 is $281.23. And the total cost per property for 2023 is $287.14.
Thank you. And follow on.
Seeking further clarification. They came to us last year with this new formula. So I'm actually looking prior to the new formula. So I guess maybe 2022. I don't know if you have that number figure, but there's been a significant jump. That's the only point I'm trying to figure that out.
CEO Schmidt, and then Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Coggins, for you to Deputy Mayor Cabral. So Deputy Mayor Cabral, I believe the actual formula changed in, I want to say 2016. So whereby they brought on the base and the call for service. What we can do is there was a presentation provided to council some time ago, which provided some of that information. We'll go back, staff will go back and obtain that information for you. I don't want to say it was 216 or 214 just in case, because I'm not 100% sure, but we can verify that for you and provide that back to council.
Councilor, any further questions on policing? And seeing none, may I have a mover and seconder, please, for the presentation regarding the policing services? And Councilors Garwood and Deputy Cabral, that the 2024 operating budget policing services in the amount of $2,424,238 be referred to the November 22nd budget session for further consideration. All those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you. I was actually just about to call you right up to the front, I assume. At this time, I'd like to call on Ms. Maxwell and Dr. Murdoch to present on the Barrie and area physician recruitment, please. Thank you and welcome. No, you're not. You're right on time. Yes, you're good. Thank you.
So good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us join you once again to present to you about the physician recruitment that we're doing in the Barrie and area. My name is Corinne Maxwell. I'm the physician recruitment for the Barrie area, physician recruitment coordinator, for the physician recruitment task force. And joining me today is Dr. Stu Murdoch. He's the Chief of Family Medicine and Postgraduate Education Program Director at the Department of Family and Community Medicine at the University of Toronto. So, Barrie Area Physician Recruitment, otherwise known as BAPR. What is it and who funds it? So the purpose of the Barrie Area Physician Recruitment Task Force is to bring physicians, healthcare leaders, and municipal leaders together to develop and implement strategies to train, recruit, and retain physicians to the community. Using these strategies, the recruitment coordinator works on recruiting and retaining both family medicine physicians as well as specialty physicians. So our funding partners include Springwater Township, Oro-Medonte, Town of Innisfil, City of Barrie, and Royal Victoria Regional Health Centre. Next slide, please. As we know, the province is facing a crisis with the current doctor shortage, specifically in family medicine. There are currently 2.2 million people living in Ontario without a family physician, and this is an increase from 1.8 from 1 year ago. This number is expected to grow to 3 million by 2025. Next slide. So some of the factors that are impacting the shortage include challenging effects of COVID-19 on our healthcare workers. Many of our physicians have experienced burnout, fatigue, increased stress, financial strain, and lack of job satisfaction. Next slide. Yep. Aging population has profound impact on primary care. As the patient population is aging, more people are presenting with more chronic diseases. The physician workforce is also aging. Seniors make up the fastest growing share of family physicians, with the percentage 65 years and older more than doubling to 15% from 6.5% over the last 20 years. So in other words, 1.7 million Ontario residents have a family doctor that's 65 years or older.
And there is certainly a significant dwindling interest in family medicine, and there's lots of reasons, and there's lots of systems issues around our medical students choosing family medicine. But this just shows the decline. The 2023 unmatched spots, it was 267. And for 2024, we are, I'm guessing the number is going to be around 350 unmatched spots across Canada. That's 17 medical schools across. And next slide. Many of our family medicine graduates do go into enhanced skills. So family medicine does train enhanced skills like emergency medicine, palliative care, hospitalist medicine, and there's a huge interest for all of our family medicine doctors trying to get into one of these programs. It's very competitive. And why? Well, one, they like that particular area of medicine, but two, it's a real message of the dislike for family medicine. So they're trying hard not to do a comprehensive care medicine. And there's lots of reasons: small businesses, inequity, stuff with hidden curriculum, complexity, difficulties with waiting lists, and it goes on and on, but very much of it is a systems problem. Next slide. And in terms of what the government's really doing is they're really trying hard to put, for the first time in a long time, significantly increasing the number of residency spots across the country. In Ontario, they've added the new medical school, Toronto Metropolitan University. It's supposed to come online for July 25 with an undergraduate or medical school group plus postgrad, but all the other schools in Ontario, the other 6 schools are expanding, with 60% of the expansion spots being family medicine, 40% being specialty or Royal College, and the mixture of new residents, the government is asking for 80% of them to be Canadian medical graduates, and 20% of them are to be in international medical graduates. For us at the Department of Family and Community Medicine, we have 40 new spots, and my job as program director is trying to find these 40 spots with all the competition happening. Humber River Hospital has just come on as a new site. Scarborough is asked to expand, and working with Dr. Gillespie, who's at the back, we're looking at expanding into Midland and try to look at developing the same kind of model as the Barrie Family Medicine Teaching Unit, which it will take several years and some funding and cooperation with the government, but will significantly increase the number of graduates who have stay in our communities for 2 years. And we know we retain about 60 to 70%, which will be huge for our area. And obviously here, where you are backing on to several boundaries, and one being the Midland area, and we're looking at having residents there for 2 years, and meeting with the CEO and Jeff's team last couple of weeks. We're going to move forward, hopefully the next couple of years, to have our residents there.
Okay, next slide, please. So I'm just going to speak a little bit about our local primary care. We have the Barrie Family Health Organization, which encompasses family physicians from across all 3 municipalities. So they have 104 signatory physicians, 36 contract locum physicians, 5 anticipated retirements by the end of this year, which we've seen a few come already. And the Barrie FO has 144,095 patients from 3 municipalities that are rostered to a physician within the FO. And that data was just provided to me last month. With the projected retirements, we can expect an additional 6,000 patients in need of a family doctor, and that's based on an average size of 1,200 patients in a practice. Next slide. So after the bad news, let's talk about the good news, our successes. So for the last fiscal year 23-24, we have successfully recruited 6 new family physicians to the area and 35 new specialists to the Royal Victoria Regional Health Centre. Next slide. So what type of specialists have we recruited? We've recruited general internal medicine, anesthesiologist, emergency physicians, radiologist, endocrinologist, gastroenterologist, a few neurologists, 2 vascular surgeons, benign hematology, gynecology.
Sorry, next slide. Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, I'm getting excited.
Yeah, I know.
Gynecology, oncology, orthopedic surgeon, a surgical assist, a few hospitalists, and a psychiatrist. So the recruitment of specialists such as these have helped with our annual 206,000 imaging tests read by our radiologists, 82,000 emergency visits that we see every year at RVH, or the 10,000 surgeries that are done by our surgeons and anesthesiologists. So we do continue to recruit. As you know, RVH is working towards another expansion that will require us to double the medical staff over the next 10 to 20 years. Current medical staff is 495. Some of the areas that we're recruiting in right now is a geriatrician, infectious disease specialist, a physiatrist, rheumatologist, adult and child psychiatrist, family medicine practitioners, of course, general internal medicine, pediatrician, a respirologist, and neurologists. Next slide, please. So I've just listed here ways that I do work on recruitment. So I post advertisements on websites, medical journals, and I'm building some social media platforms. Attending medical conferences and job fairs where I get to set up a recruitment booth. Most recently, I attended the Ottawa University for Family Medicine. So I met with 120 residents that kind of walked through and met with different recruiters from different areas. And I made some really good connections, and I've got my fingers crossed. Hopefully we'll be able to bring some to our area. Leveraging medical education opportunities for residents and medical students. I meet and greet with interested candidates, and I continue to build relationships, arrange meet and greets with department chiefs and the Barrie Fit, organize community tours, hospital tours, clinic tours rather, act as a liaison in the community, hospital, medical practice, and with the applicant. maintain communication with each candidate and to ensure appropriate follow-up. And I always act as an ambassador for our community, the hospital, and our family medicine teaching unit. Next slide.
So the big area the government has identified as areas of recruitment to keep the province going. One is family physicians, who you've heard of. Second is emergency physicians, and you've heard of the crises, especially to our rural communities where emergency rooms are closing. Those two areas are all developed through family medicine training. And the other two specialty areas is anesthesia and mental health psychiatry. In those areas, they're trying to expand, but real crisis in anesthesia, especially with ORs being closed and the backlog. And at RVH, we've had to close OR days because of the lack of anesthesiology. And we're trying to increase the spots across the province, but it is very challenging. In terms of our family medicine unit, we've been here, we've talked about it, really successful, like all of our teaching units at the Department of Family Community Medicine. But we have 9 first-year residents every year. We have 18 in the program at one time. We graduate 9. Generally, we keep around 60. We keep about 2/3, but I can tell you that's starting to dwindle because fewer of them are going into comprehensive care compared to 5 years ago. We know about 1/3 of ours want to go into some kind of enhanced skills. So sometimes we do get them back if they go train for palliative care or hospitalist medicine. A third of them will go somewhere else, usually home, wherever home is. And then we try to keep 1/3 that do comprehensive care, family medicine or locum medicine. And the next slide just shows our numbers. We added another 9. So this is how many we've graduated at 117. We're still having a lot of interest. People want to train in this community. And we know that our community, once they do spend extended period of time here, some of them will go away and try other areas. But a lot of them, once they do go away, will come back because they know what the base is for that. So what's the future of our program? We're still, expansion is full on. Are we going to be expanding the Barrie unit? It's on the table. We're looking definitely at expanding into Midland and Orillia, as well as some other areas in the province. We do know as much, it's dire straits across the country. It's dire straits in Ontario. We have been doing well in our community, and we know the education piece works. We have good grassroots, and we actually have a great hospital, but we have a fabulous community, and our residents just love to live and play here as well. And that's one of the main reasons we have success. So we really need to keep the energy moving because we don't want to go into dire crisis. There are communities like Windsor, big communities that are back to signing bonuses of $150,000 a year, or a signing bonus for $150,000. We have not done a signing bonus, but we're getting close to having to consider signing bonuses for some of our subspecialty. It is so competitive.
Next slide, please. So in conclusion, Barrie area physician recruitment kindly asks for the financial support in the amount of $8,000 from the Township of Springwater to help further our initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Council, open up the floor for any questions made available. Oh. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
definitely appreciate your time here, and I will ask council for a mover and seconder to receive the delegation. I have councillors Thompson and Moore that the presentation from the Barrie and area physician recruitment regarding the 2024 budget request be received, and that the 2024 BARP budget request in the amount of $8,000 be referred to the November 22nd, 2023 budget session for further consideration. Seeing no more questions, all those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council, I will now call on Doug Hebner and Cheryl Flanagan to make a presentation on the NBCA.
Good evening, Your Worship. It's our pleasure to be here, Council. It's nice to see you all again, staff and anyone in attendance today. It's our pleasure to be here. Next slide, please. The NVCA has been around for 63 years. Our watershed is managed through an integrated watershed management. We cover 18 municipalities, and we do reach down a little bit into the Oak Ridges Moraine to cover some of Caledon, and we provide some planning services for Caledon as well. All of our municipal councillors that participate on our board are elected officials, and we don't have anyone that's appointed that's a non-elected official. I just want to talk about the waterways that run through and traverse our system. The Nottawasaga Valley starts in the south, and it's a northern riverine system that runs into Georgian Bay. It supports one of the largest salmon fisheries in the province of Ontario, and is responsible for delivering salmon as far as the coast of Lake Michigan on the Michigan side of the lake. In Springwater, we cover about 543 square kilometers, 100% of the township. About 20% of that is outside of the Nottawasaga Valley watershed into the Severn Sound area. That was afforded to us from 1996 to 1999 at the request of your council. And the systems that run in our area are the Nottawasaga, the Wye River, the Willow, the Matheson, Marl Creeks, and of course the Minising wetlands. Next slide, please. When we started to meet with Minister Urick back in 2018, we wanted to deliver a message about the work that the Nottawasaga does. So we created our initial budget draft. It was an overview of our programs. You've had that presented to you for you to look through and see. If you haven't read it, I encourage you to read it. It gives you a lot more breakout of all the programs that we do deliver. Next slide, please. In a nutshell, we have corporate services, planning and regulations, watershed science, flood operations, environmental education, forestry, environmental stewardship, and land operations. At the start of the presentations tonight, you mentioned that you're looking at supporting Category 1. I'm going to present Category 1 and Category 2 and Category 3 items for you and your constituents to hear and see. Next slide, please. One of our core items that we provide is flood management. You can see from this picture that when high water reaches out of a riverine system, it can flood quite rapidly. Maybe remember the 2017 flood in the Allison Basin. Pictures of farmers standing in fields of potatoes with 20 centimeters of water over top of the crop, and hired men holding carp that had been caught swimming through the fields. You just don't know when floodwater is going to happen. When I lived out west, I witnessed 300-year events in a 3-year period. Watched the city of Minot, North Dakota, give up 18,000 homes in one flood overnight. So when floodwaters come, excuse me, it's important that we react fast. Our work isn't to prevent flooding. Our work is to try to make sure and ensure that we can help municipalities like yourselves position homes and infrastructure in areas where they'll be safe. And we do this by looking at the floodplain, understanding erosion hazards, and understanding how the riparian banks provide buffer for agricultural crops and developments and surface water. Next slide, please. Our planning and development process is what we do through regulations. We're guided by the province of Ontario to provide these planning and development guides. We do permitting. Just a little bit for you, up until September of this year, we processed the data from January till September of this year. Under the calculation equation that the province of Ontario has created for a 90-day return on permits, we're targeting that at 96.1%. We challenged that in 2020 to try to take that down to 60 days, and we're hitting that at 91% at 60 days. So we're getting there. We're getting closer to that. We've been short-staffed this last year. We were down to 1 engineer from 3. This budget will show you an increase that will allow us to bring on more planning staff. We worked with Watson Associates to discern what we needed to move forward with, and we've come through with that number best we can. Next slide, please. Conservation lands. We just worked with your staff recently to take on some land that was acquired through tax assessments, and people wanted to turn the land back over to the township. This land is non-recreational use land. It's passive conservation land, and it is in the menacing wetland area. And it just ensures that we can protect that land from future tree cutting and help protect the menacing wetland. You have to consider that the menacing wetland works as a sponge. It pulls water and holds water and slows water down as it travels through the riverine system. If we lost the absorbent qualities of the menacing wetland, we could see a free board of water from anywhere from 1.8 to 2.0 meters of water at the Nottawasaga in Wasaga Beach. So you'd see severe flooding on the Moseley and River Road system in Wasaga Beach, and probably see severe flooding on Moseley on the Georgian Bay side of the Nottawasaga Valley. So it's important that we look at things through a watershed lens. I know it's very easy to look at where your municipal boundaries are, but decisions made along a riverine system can impact those above and below where those decisions are made. In our agriculture, not our agricultural land, but our conservation lands, we have several conservation authority areas. A major area for us is Tiffin, where we deliver our conservation education. Next slide, please. Stewardship and restoration services are things that we work on throughout our watershed. We've been doing a tremendous amount of work in the southern end of the watershed, trying to take that breeding ground of the Chinook salmon as far south in the watershed as we can. We're now approaching the Oak Ridges Moraine where salmon are growing. You may not be aware, but there's a $7 million fishery in the Great Lakes that includes Georgian Bay. And the delivery of Chinook is a big part of our tourism area here. There's many salmon festivals throughout the riverine system, and sports fishing is a very important part of it. We do a lot of stream bank restoration, and we've also used that opportunity to take advantage of some of the perils we face. Emerald ash borer has been a pest that's been ravaging our native ashes. When we do stream bank restoration, we're utilizing ash. We're using them almost like a plank road, driving them into the bank, supporting riverine systems so we see less erosion. Less erosion on the bank means we're able to slow or retard the amount of phosphorus or nitrates that come from agricultural operations or housing developments into the riverine system. So it's important that we do this type of work. We're working to control phragmites along the Georgian Bay shoreline. We do this when we have opportunities for funding. And this year we did a coordinated effort of volunteer tree planting where we delivered almost 8,000 seedlings and seeded native grasslands into the area as well. Next slide, please. In forestry, we deliver the MTIF program for the province of Ontario. We planted 78,000 trees across 18 properties, creating 41 hectares of new forest, including about 1.3 kilometers of windbreaks. In order to deliver this forestry program, we received financial contributions outside of levy totaling $342,000. So when you make decisions to not support the financial contribution of levy to category 3 items, you reduce that amount of money that comes in for the program completely. And you'll see setbacks as far as that goes. For tree planting situations, in order to run the program in Springwater, for those that would want to consider an MTIF program, there would be additional fees to purchase seedlings. So without levy, homeowners will pay more for trees to participate in the MTIF program. This year, we worked with over 17 landowners in managed forest programs across the watershed. Next slide, please. So I just want to talk a little bit about, what could you miss out in if you decide to move forward with the category 3 exclusion? In the past 5 years, we've delivered 54 healthy water projects in Springwater and supported Springwater residents with $59,000 in grants. Without your support as levy, we'll be looking to support the municipalities that are supporting us. And if the grant funds are expired in those municipalities, there may not be funds available for residents in Springwater. in the future. We've done restoration projects. We had a lot of inquiries from the area. We did over 26,100 trees planted in Springwater. We planted over 297 hectares of MTIF plans. We developed the phosphorus reduction program and initiative. We are collaborating with Ontario Hydro for Springbank and channel alignment on both Williston and Matheson Creeks. Those are all types of works that without support financially may not move forward in the townships that don't support the Category 3 programs. Next slide, please. Watershed science is the aspect where we collect data. It's the sort of the sounding board of where the watershed is at from a science perspective. We'll use this data to create and produce our watershed report cards. We do this to inform residents and people of the state of the water. We began implementing climate change strategies in the watershed a few years ago, and we view internal programs and we developed monitoring approaches that will help us deal with climate change moving forward. That health checks piece is very important. Monitoring is important in the work that we do across the watershed because we can get a start point and we can get a finish point, and we can actually demonstrate the benefits of the work that's being done to support the river system as a whole. Next slide, please. So with water-based scientific local ecosystem health assessments for watersheds, the report cards would probably go without support with levy. We won't be able to determine the needs for and the effectiveness of restoration impacts in new development. We won't be able to identify and stress the impacts on local environment or assist with land use planning and policy decisions by supporting that with data that's collected by our monitoring team. It's going to be very difficult to track trends over time. If we stop tracking them, it's hard to insert that data. We won't be doing regular monitoring of fish, benthic invertebrates, or the insects in the water, temperature and chemistry and geomorphology. These are all things that we use as scientists to indicate the health and the benefits of the work that's being done on the system. Next slide, please. Our education program, we worked with over 8,300 individuals from 2.5 years of age to 90 years old by September of this year. The Tiffin Conservation Center is the pride of our education piece. We provided day camp opportunities for over 661 campers and included 12 new Ukrainian newcomers. The newcomers program was started and supported by Rotary. It's something that's gone over very, very well. The education program, we deliver a grade 4 curriculum for Simcoe County. We do that by providing a visit to Tiffin as well as 2 visits to the schools to work with those kids. I think it's important in this time of climate activity and climate change that we do take the time to educate and support learning of how our environment works so that we can create great citizens in the future, that when they buy homes and properties and come in to live in our municipalities, they have an understanding of how the watershed works and the importance of it. Next slide, please. So what can residents miss out on? We hosted over 3,100 people from Springwater and students in the past 5 years. COVID's reduced that a little bit now. Externally, we funded our program through support from free microplastics community programming, children programming in Springwater libraries, Yellowfish Road programming, community education outreach, and the Friends of Menacing Wetlands. Our homeschool programs were hosted through the community, and Springwater residents participated in those. We have our Camp Tiffin, our Nature School, our Festival for Fort Willow, or Spring Tonic Maple Syrup Festival. So without levy funding for municipal people from Springwater Township, if we're not being supported, there could well be a surcharge for those residents to come and participate in those activities. Not unlike when a organization hosts a conference, the members of the conference get a $10 fee, and if you're not a member of that conference, you may pay a $12 fee. Those are all things that we'll still have to work out, but they are things that we'll have to face in today's economy. Next slide, please. So I'm going to pass this on to Cheryl right now. She's going to take you through our budget and our budget request. Thank you for your time, and I'll be available for questions when Cheryl finishes our presentation. Take it away, Cheryl.
Good evening, and thank you through the mayor to council. Thank you again for letting us be here tonight. Our 2024 draft budget process started back in June and July. We brought forward a budget report to our board of directors at our August meeting. At that point, staff requested an increase of $200,000 to our levy. During deliberation, the board spoke a lot about the Watson report that our CAO mentioned a little either earlier on one of the other slides, where there was an indication that there was a need for 2 additional staff in our planning department to help get things moving a little bit faster. And so during that deliberation, the board actually decided to increase the $200,000 request up to a $400,000 request to ensure that there were 2 new staff members for our planning and regulations department. At that point, a draft budget was then brought forward for circulation at the September board meeting. Once it was approved for circulation, it was circulated to municipalities for the mandatory 30-day review period. The NBCA does understand, however, that 30 days can be a really quick turnaround, especially for some of our more rural municipalities. And so we actually give 8 weeks, and the final date for commenting is November the 17th. And then at our December meeting, the budget will be voted on. So how have things changed this year for the 2024 budget? So this budget is the transitionary budget that's been spoken about for the last couple of years as we move into the category 1, category 2, and category 3 items. So just as a quick reference, because there's still seems to be some confusion with some of our municipalities. Corporate services, governance, planning and regulations, flood operations, those are all category 1 items. Our lands and operations, our stewardship and restoration, and our watershed science have combinations of category 1 and category 3 items. And then our forestry and our education is all 100% category 3 items. All departments could have a category 2 item if there was a specific project with the municipality. However, at this time, the MBCA does not have any category 2 items within Springwater. An example I've been using, which of course does not apply to Springwater, is the risk management official. We are the risk management official for 9 of our 18 municipalities. I believe Springwater uses Barrie as theirs, but that would be an example of what a category 2 agreement would be. So a couple of things related to the budget. We completed the budget based on the assumption that all municipalities, excuse me, would be supportive of the full categories 1, 2, and 3, given at this point, and previously we're at about a 70% of municipalities that have given their support and or signed agreements already. And if this is not the case, the board has agreed to use reserves for the 2024 year to cover any deficits that come from the categories, from categories 3 in municipalities opting out. And then we'll make adjustments for the 2025 budget to reflect that information. One of the other things that we have done this year is done not only a category 1 budget, but also a category 2 and 3 budget. But we've also created a combined budget because a lot of our municipalities, as this is the first time you're seeing that, it can be a little difficult to kind of do a comparison to where last year was. So we did a combined budget so you could still do a comparison. So for the Springwaters portion, the category 1 is $215,958. That was mentioned by your director of finance. The proposed categories 2 and 3 would have been $24,870. At this point, I understand that you're not looking to do any of that, but it was put in here prior to knowing that. I did this PowerPoint a little while ago. And then how do we leverage your funds? So our CAO spoke to this a little bit already, how we were able to leverage some of our funds. The municipal investment of the levy, which for 2024 would be just over $3 million. We then add to it the tiny little portion the province gives us, a little bit of the federal money, and then the grants and the user fees for an additional $3.2 million for a total investment of almost $6.5 million. This is the current value assessment as we receive it from the MNRF. This was provided to your CAO with the budget this year, as requested in previous years. It shows the municipalities along with the percentage of the municipality within our CA, the municipal population in total, the municipal population within the CA jurisdiction, your total CVA from MPAC, and I understand from MNRF that they're about 2 years behind with these numbers. And then the 2023 tax year CVA is modified. So that's based on the percentage of the CVA that is within the CA jurisdiction. And then that's how they calculate the apportionment percentage, which is the percent of the levy that each municipality pays. So this chart just shows kind of how the MBCA has remained very conscientious in our spending per $100,000 of CVA. You'll see that for a number of years, we were actually declining. We were trending lower. Last couple of years, we've trended a little bit higher. And then this year, we're back up in and around where we were in 2013 and 2014. So this is a non-scientific number. This is something we put into our program overview, just as a quick glance thing for our residents to have a quick understanding. Not a lot of them understand current value assessment and all of that. So we take the number of residents that are within our watershed, and we take our total levy and divide it by them. That gets a total number. So this chart is for the combined budget. So this includes categories 1, 2, and 3, and the total per resident is $15.31. For category 1, out of that $15, $13.73 of it is for category 1. And then categories 2 and 3, $1.58 of that $15 would go towards category 3 items. Our asset management, this is also something we had to look into. We had to take into account what items are categories 1 versus categories 2 and 3. So again, with Springwater's asset management contribution for category 1 would be $9,955. Again, if you contributed to categories 2 and 3, it would be an additional $1,594. Some of the scheduled projects for this year, we have to do some dam safety reviews, as well as some works to be completed at some of our other dams as they are aging and the infrastructure needs to get done. Those are some pretty big ticket items, and just as an FYI, they are category 1. And then just some other parts replacements to extend the lives of some of our equipment. We have to replace 2 vehicles that we managed to get a few extra years out of because of COVID, but we need to get them up and running again. So again, this number includes the category 3 items. So it's a little bit skewed from what Director Radigan would have told you. But if you were to go in with categories 1 and 3, the total difference would be $32,057 over last year. And so that's the end of our slideshow. We'd be happy to take any questions now if you would like.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Council, I open up to the floor for any questions of Ms. Flanagan or CEO Hebner. Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So question, when you broke up the category 1 and 3, there were certain projects that you had listed on there, sections that you referred to as both category 1 and 3. I'd be interested to know how you broke those up to what is included in category 1 and then what portion of that dollar amount is in category 3.
And I'm not sure who to direct that. Ms. Flanagan.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Alexander, I'll certainly take that. That was quite a process that we actually started in 2021. What we had to do is identify all of the works that each department did, and then what is considered to be category 1 based on the legislation versus what's category 3 based on the legislation, and then determine how much work and effort, how much money, how many grants, what's given to it. So an easy example to explain would be one of our stewardship programs. Our stewardship programs, if they are doing work on conservation authority owned lands, that's considered a category 1 item. If they are doing it on private landowners or anybody else other than a CA owned land, it's considered a category 3. So that's how we had to break it down. We had to go through each type of grant that we get and decide, okay, is this grant going towards a CA owned land or a private land, and then determine it based on that factor.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to either Mr. Hebner or Ms. Flanagan. If we could just put the slide back up for me, please, for the category 3 education components. Included Camp Tiffin, the festival at Fort Willow, the maple syrup piece. That's not the one.
Next slide.
Through the chair or through the mayor, I apologize. My computer's being a little active.
There we go.
Here you go.
There we go. Thank you. So I want to make sure that I understand clearly. You know, there's a lot of folks down in my ward, particularly that do go to the summer camps. We go to the schools, the festivals, the maple syrup festival. We do all of that at Tiffin. But for some of these, we already do pay a fee, especially for camps, etc. So how will those fees be affected then for our residents? So are you saying now if we don't support category 3 that we will have to pay an increase?
Yes, that's what we're entertaining through the mayor, if I may respond. As I explained, it's like if you belong to Conservation Ontario and you're a member of Conservation Ontario and you attend their annual Laterno conference, you pay $10. If you're not a member of Conservation Ontario and you entertain attending that conference, you pay $12. So there's an added fee for that service. It's something that would certainly look at on our educational programming. What the levy does for our educational programming is it provides the seed dollars when we're not offering educational programming to do the planning, to do the staff recruitment, to do the curriculum development. And without that, our service level would just really drop back. We wouldn't have that startup value to generate the planning and generate the itemized programming.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I have something else to say, but I'm going to stem off of what Councillor Moore just said, and that's a great question. I do have concern with the word that was utilized as the response of entertaining. We're sitting here tonight looking at a budget. We need to know what that entertaining would look like. What is that cost going to be? So I completely agree with you, Councillor Moore. Couple things that I wanted to say, maybe more of a comment than a question, and then I will go into a question. First off, I've spent a lot of time looking at this, and I know there was a previous presentation as well. I think there is still a large amount of confusion around these categories. I'm going to be honest with you, and maybe I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for anyone else, but I see some of the looks when we're talking about these categories. And personally, if I'm confused, how is our residents and our constituents supposed to be able to follow this? Because I think it is quite difficult. Secondary to that, I also have concern based upon how, for instance, the financials listed in here are completed based upon the Springwater Township supporting categories 1, 2, and 3. When we specifically spoke about this not that long ago around not supporting certain categories. So I'm not quite sure why the financials were set up that way. But my question, and I'll direct it to through the mayor to whoever can answer it, whether it be CAO Hebner or Ms. Flanagan. And it goes back to a similar question that I asked last year and a similar question that I asked to last time the CAO was here speaking, was on slide 6. It speaks to mid-year reporting indicates that staff met provincial timelines 96% of the time, but it doesn't speak to what those timelines are outlined by the provincial government. So it's great to say that you meet them 96% of the time, but if they're 9 weeks, then our residents are still waiting 9 weeks plus. So could you provide a bit more insight as to what that timeline looks like, please?
Certainly, through the mayor, if I may, to the councillor. We provide that annually at the end of each year when we break it out as an itemized amount. And if you'd like that in the future, I can have that delivered to you. We provide that information. It's on our website for last year, and it will be on our website again this year. The calc is calculated. See, this is where someone says it took 100 days to do a permit. How can it take 100 days to do a permit? The clock only runs when the NVCA has the information. We're not responsible for the time that the proponent has the information trying to, for example, a development permit comes in and we ask for review. We review the document, we make comments, we send out 12 comments for them to address to move forward with the product. When we have the information in hand, the clock's ticking. When we deliver the information to the proponent, the clock stops. Sometimes that's held on to for a few days and it's turned back over and the process goes quite smoothly. Other times that's held on to by the proponent, whether they be a homeowner or a consultant or a developer's contractor. It can take weeks, sometimes months for them to make that turnaround. The other thing that slows down the process is the fact that we make 10 comments that all need to be addressed. They all have to be ticked off before the permit can be issued. 1 through 3, they answer. They don't answer 4 through 6. And then when they submit their comments, they still haven't answered 4 through 6, and they provide 12 new items that we have to speak to. So it can become quite convoluted at times, but we're following the rules and the outlay of the province. And when I referred to the 96 and I said 91, it's actually 93.1. We reduced that from 90 days to 60 days. But it takes into consideration all our permit timelines.
Thank you, CEO Hebner. And just for clarification, of the 58 permits that were spoken of, the suggestion is that of that, you're saying 93% met your calc, which is 60 days?
Correct.
Correct. So that's 3 permits that did not meet those 60 days?
Potentially, yes.
Okay. Is there a possibility then, understanding that every permit that is issued from the NVCA has a file number that would have a date as to which that application was filed with the NVCA, and it would have a date as to which the application was then deemed complete or whichever it was, and the permit was issued to the NVCA? I'd be very curious to know that because I have definitely had more than 3 conversations with 3 different proponents over the last year with regards to the timelines that have been indicated here. So if there's further information to better help, I guess, myself understand how the calcs can be moved from 90 days to 60 days or back to 90 days, I would really appreciate knowing file by file of the 58 permits issued, the entire length of time it took our residents and businesses to get that. And speaking of the permits, and last year it was also the fees the revenue generated with the fees associated. So I noticed that was not indicated on the budget this year. If you have that, Ms. Flanagan, I would much appreciate that. I would also like to speak to the permitting process. When a permit is issued, of the 58 that were issued, I know it'd be difficult to off the top of your head, but let's say it was a pool permit or a septic reinspection of a failed septic. Does the NVCA then come back out and inspect after the permit? So our residents or business files a permit, they pay for the permit. Does the NVCA inspect on the permits?
Yes and no.
And how many of those would be no?
I wouldn't have that answer for you this evening, Mayor, but I can certainly look into it for you.
I would really appreciate that because there's a perception where if we're paying for a service, so if I'm going for a pool permit and I pay the NVCA for a pool permit, and then the municipality inspects it and takes on the liability for that, I'm just curious as to why there's a permit being required. So for the ones, I would like to also know of the permits of the 58 that were there, how many required inspection and how much of that would just then lie with the municipality. there any questions from any other members of council before I continue? Oh, no, you can. Deputy Cabral?
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Hebner. I'm just curious with respect to the educational aspect in category threes. A lot of it had to do with young folks camping, things like that. And I would suspect, once again, maybe this has already kind of been brought up with respect to the fees, but with respect to the students' transportation costs or dialogue with school boards, do the school boards also support the NVCA financially in getting those students there? How do the students get there? Is it the NVCA that's, floating the costs to get the students there too?
The students from our grade 4 curriculum, through the mayor to Councillor Cabral, in our grade 4 curriculum, the students come for one visit, which the school board pays for that visit. For the 2 visits we do to the school, we deliver staff at our cost to those schools for the delivery of the program.
Thank you. Ms. Flanagan, was there a comment to be added?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. 2 quick comments. The first one is the revenue. I did put it on slide 6 for you, so it is there. Just trying to get my computer to work, but I think it was around the $50,000 mark.
55, I believe.
55. Okay. So I did put it there because I knew you would ask me for it. In regards to the education, basically what we have with our education program with the school boards is we have a contract to deliver programming. So school boards enter contracts with different education communities for them to have basically allowed field trips. So we are an authorized field trip location. And so the school board will contribute to the school to help pay for the transportation to come. And then the school pays for the actual field trip, whether it's through a grant they've received from the school board or through having to charge a parent for a field trip fee. So it's a combination of a bunch of different items depending on which school board and where the locations are.
Thank you. And Councillor Alexander?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just further to that point. So if the school board is paying for part of it, is that do we have a breakdown of, so let's say we are deciding potentially not to go with category 3 items, and that, the worry is, I think some of the educational programs and stuff we might lose out on. And unfortunately, when you can't provide us that dollar amount, it makes it a bit more difficult. But I would be interested in your comment that the school board pays for part of it as well, because I'd like to know what part they are paying for and what that, as it sits right now, what that breakdown would be.
Ms. Flanagan?
Through the mayor, I would have to speak to our manager of education to get an exact breakdown specific for Springwater. And I could probably get it to you in the next couple of days.
Yeah. Any further questions, council? I just one on the category 2-3, and the suggestion that municipalities that don't partake in that, understanding that a watershed isn't something that you can just break up and say it actually, like you said, it flows. The Minising wetlands is a huge part of the NVCA's watershed. I think that the suggestion whereby not to do projects or not to do tree planting or not to pay attention to the areas as the watershed as a whole, I'm just questioning. It seems like it's almost a penalty, or if you don't choose these, we are going to penalize your residents, but we don't actually know what the penalty will be. And I think that if there's going to be watershed management, whether it's tree planting, would that not just go where it's needed in the watershed as a whole?
Through the mayor to yourself, if I could. I think the greatest penalty will probably be the loss of staffing to provide that. So that's how it's going to be reduced. Our monitoring program relies heavily on funding from levy. We probably won't have a monitoring program. So there's a lot of losers in that situation. 18 municipalities will feel the pain from that. It's interesting that our Are you going to have these same discussions with the 20% of your township that isn't in the NVCA? You're going to continue forestry programs in those areas? Are you going to do stewardship work in those areas? Are you going to provide educational programs in those areas? I'm a homeowner and a property owner, and I pay taxes and support my municipality. I would certainly have questions if there's a two-tiered system that we operate. That's how we're kind of feeling now when we look at category 2 and 3 and 1. When we came in the past, you've all been excited about the category 3 work that's delivered to your municipality. And rightly so. It's great work. It's wonderful. It's the happy work that's done that people can take joy and pride in. And quite often, a lot of municipalities say, well, you know, why do you do the planning? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? That's the development that the regulation authority that's been assigned to us by the province. That's one of our roles. And unfortunately, we're the persons that sometimes say no. And that's what can deliver the length of a permit too, is getting to no or beyond no. So I don't think there's really a lot of winners here when you consider removing funding category 3 programs for conservation authorities, not just the NVCA, but any around the area. We've signed 8 conservation authority MOUs with people fully supporting this, and we have 2 more that it's gone to the committee of the whole and been approved and coming back to council. So that's 12 of those. Just like yourselves, we have Mulmer has got some questions, ESSA has some questions. Everyone else so far has still indicated that they're on board to support our category 1, 2, and 3 programming. So it's not in any way or any fashion to be punitive. It's fiscally responsible. If I have to keep the employees, I think I should be supporting the places that financially support them. And strategically trying to honor the management of the whole watershed at the same time. It's going to be a challenge. We're going to have to balance a lot of balls in the air. And I realize that when you aggregate numbers, when you're looking at, you know, the $27,000 or, but I'm sorry, and pardon me, Mayor, I can't remember the number off the top of my head. You add those up to try to reduce your budget by a percentage. That's understood. We certainly have to manage costs and look at costs too. But I look at just the Healthy Waters program. If we couldn't continue the Healthy Waters program, that just pulled 50 grand out of your township. If we look at what we delivered there last year, that's 50% more than what you support category 3 levies just on one item. Historically, in our stewardship program, we get $150,000 worth of levy. And we'll spend anywhere from $8 million to $1.5 million in deliverable services across 18 municipalities. It's a magnifier. It's something we're happy to do and we're proud to do. That will be in jeopardy because we won't have the staff to write the grants. We won't have the staff to reach out to the Patagonias, the Cabela's, the provincial grants, the federal grants. That'll dry up. And I don't see anybody stepping up in the private sector to step up and take that on. And I'm certainly not seeing municipalities. MECP is completely pulled out of the operational aspect of environmental management, and so has the Ministry of Natural Resources. Fortunately, there's places like the NCC and Alice that they're stepping up, but you're still going to pay for it. And I think we've had a wonderful relationship for 63 years. And it's frustrating and sad on our aspect.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Ms. Flanagan, if I can just confirm with you then that the information regarding so as we said, the 58 permits, the revenue received that is indicated, the question is, how much of that actually required inspection? So I get that there was revenue received from those applications, but how many of the 58 required inspection and not just the plan review portion at a later date? That would be great. Anything more at that time? Any other, just for follow-up from any members? No, I think that was seeking it. All right, at this time I will need a mover and seconder for the 2024 NVCA asset management levy. Oh, sorry, no, that's the second one. Let's go back up to the first one. Mover and seconder, please. I have Councillor Fisher and Counselor Moore, that the presentation from the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, NVCA, regarding the 2024 budget request be received, and that the 2024 NVCA operating levy request in the amount of $215,957.77, representing Springwater's share, be referred to the November 2022-2023 budget session for the further consideration. All those in favor? And that has carried. And now I'm moving on to the a mover and seconder for the asset management portion. I have Deputy Cabral and Alexander, that the 2024 NVCA asset management levy in the amount of $9,955.42, representing Springwater's share, be referred to the November 2022-2023 budget session for further consideration. All those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here to speak to you, and best of luck with your budget deliberations. Take care.
Council, at this time, we will just take a quick break. All right, council, we will reconvene, and at this time we'll move on to our our presentation from the Severn Sound Environmental Association. And at this time, I'll ask Julie Cayley and John Main to make the presentation. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. These are good to go. Awesome. Well, good evening, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor, Council, staff, and guests that are here. I see a bunch of guests in the back. And I'm sure there's some folks online as well. We really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I have my colleague, John Main, as you mentioned, with me, and I understand Heather will be, or not Heather, No, Jennifer will be changing the slides. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So I think most of you know the history and where Severn Sound is and where you're part of Severn Sound. But the main points are from one of the 17 most polluted areas of the Great Lakes to 1997, when Springwater was one of the leaders establishing the SSCA, and we're now your joint municipal service board. So basically, we're the environmental arm of 8 municipal members, and the local area's Source Protection Authority for municipal drinking water. And thank you to Councillor Alexander, who is your current representative on our board, and our vice chair. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go through a bit of the 2023 highlights. My colleague is going to go through the Sustainable Severn Sound project, and then we'll talk a bit about 2024 and open up to some questions I'm sure you have around our budget. So obviously we monitor to assess current conditions and trends. And this year we saw significant changes in water quality in this area, including in Orr Lake as well. So toxic algae, blue-green algae blooms, which I'm sure you heard a lot about this summer. Really a complex situation, particularly in places like Orr Lake. And we are currently working with your staff, talking about sort of what next steps forward might look like. We also monitor climate. So we have weather stations in Midland and LaFontaine. We're also working with the Simcoe County Federation of Agriculture and have helped them acquire a station that they've put up in Elmville. So we'll be working with them on data. We help summarize that data so that the ag community can use it as well. Usually they'll ask for data when they need it. We've had a lot of success in grant applications this year from the province. We, for one, had a pilot that, thank you for those of you who are able to make it out and see the monitoring project. It is doing a pilot of monitoring receiving water for wastewater and stormwater effluent. The project's in and around Elmville. That's no added cost to the township. So that was a $50,000 grant. And that information will be important as the province begins to implement new stormwater consolidated linear infrastructure environmental compliance approval process. They don't like to do anything with small acronyms. The CLI ECA. Next slide, please. We're also successful in getting a grant from the Ministry of Environment to work up 20 years worth of data. So we're able to look at trends in water quality and environmental quality in the entire watershed. So we're in the process of doing that right now, and we are seeing some concerns. So there are some concerning trends, and we've got those noted on this slide. So things like increasing chloride and sodium levels, bioavailable phosphorus, which certainly we're seeing in streams like the Wye River or Lake. Like I mentioned, with algae blooms, we're also seeing increase in nutrients in Orr Lake and low oxygen levels. Next slide, please. So in terms of some other program implementation highlights, we did continue with our tree distribution program. So to date, over 5,500 seedlings have been distributed in Springwater to your residents to plant. We're working with you and your staff to provide information on native tree species, invasive species information, training, as well as on pollinators and no-mow policies, no-mow policies, which a lot of municipalities have asked us to help just find information for them. Several partners have our staff come to the municipal staff training sessions for their municipality. So that is an option if there's ever an interest to have that as well, doing things like helping staff do identification training on invasive species or other types of species or plants that might cause some health issues. Staff also surveyed 9 municipal properties within Springwater Township for invasive species this year, including Orr Lake and the Orr Lake Dam. And that was a request from your staff as well. Sort of emphasizing anywhere that staff can use us, please encourage them to do so. We do have expertise available for them to reach out to. We're also your Source Protection Authority, so we've been heavily involved in changes to water systems, such as the addition of the Castle Drive wells currently. So I'd like to now pass it on. If we could change to the next slide, I'll pass it on to my colleague, John Main, to talk about the Sustainable Severn Sound project.
Thank you. So this is very exciting because you, Springwater, signed on to the Partners for Climate Protection program last year. And so now you've joined this very innovative collaborative project that we work with Midland, Penetanguishene, Tiny Tay, Severn, or Medante, and Georgian Bay. And so step one is to gather the baseline data so we can tell the story of where greenhouse gases are being emitted in your township. And we'll show some pie charts at the end. Next slide, please. So the Partners for Climate Protection program, which you've signed on, which is being run by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities with ICLEI as support, they've rebranded it to be a circle. So step one is to develop an inventory of find out where the energy is being used in your community and tell the story of the greenhouse gases. Milestone 2 and 3, we're hoping to get to next year. So the goal is to have the inventory completed by the end of this year. So staff have been incredibly helpful gathering data, township data, but also helping us get letters so we can get Hydro One and Enbridge data. And it's quite incredible how much electricity and energy is being used all across the province and across the township. And so once we develop the plan, we're going to try to implement, or also known as operationalize, the plan. And milestone 5 is to then look at how well you have done, and then basically to kind of reassess and then to redefine new goals and values. Only there's a few municipalities that are ahead of us. Peterborough is now looking at their second climate plan, and they're a couple of years ahead. But you're within the pack in the peloton, and so we're getting you up to speed. And luckily, we have the expertise working with the other municipalities to have their plan. So we're actually in a really good position to develop the plan next year. Next slide, please. So this is again the same chart, but just 1 through 5, just again to drive home the steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So by the end of this year, we should have our baseline completed, as I said. And then next year, the goal is to do the target and the plan together. And so we're hoping that by kind of the April to August timeframe to have some community engagement opportunities, to have a workshop. Maybe I go to the Elmvale or the Midhurst libraries and make myself available, and we can do some surveys and do a whole mix of community engagement so we get really good feedback, and also reach out to specific stakeholders so that they can provide input on your climate plan that we're really excited to work on next year. Next slide, please. So this is a really fun chart. So instead of worrying about watershed boundaries, which we always talk about, we get to go back to the good old fashioned municipal boundaries. So this project area is actually quite substantial. It's larger than Manitoulin Island. It's about the size of Rhode Island, the American state, larger than Luxembourg. So you can see the little dots on the chart. Those are all municipal facilities that we're tracking. And that's not data that I've gathered. This is actually all the great work that Brianna Dean and your municipal staff have gathered. So as you can see, Springwater Township, a cluster of facilities in the north in Elmvale, you can see Hillsdale. And so you can kind of actually picture where those municipal facilities are in your municipality. A lot of pump stations, sewage treatment plants, lots of amazing parks in the township. So next slide, please. So in terms of climate change, there's basically kind of 2 branches or 2 families. So mitigation is reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, and adaptation is adapting to the new reality of extreme weather events, rain, heat, which is the number 1 threat with climate change is the heat waves. And we, as of course, we all know, we experienced wildfires this summer. It was a new experience for us here in Ontario. So some of the things that we will do will also have adaptation benefits. So tree planting, it will be good for carbon sequestration, but it'll also be good because you're going to have cooling in your community, street trees, and providing shade and that type of thing. So it's great when we get to do things that do both, but exclusively the Partners for Climate Change program focuses on the mitigation side, trying to figure out how much energy we use and then coming up with a plan to reduce it. So you've heard of some places have net zero goals. Climate emergencies are being declared all across the country, and they're trying to set very ambitious goals. So this is going to be new for us, and we will come up with a target that's achievable, and it will be workable, a workable goal for the achievable goal for the township. Next slide, please. Another thing which is a lot of excitement, and I know there's been discussion at the township, is electric vehicle charging. And so actually, since the slide was presented, there's a new provincial program that is announced as well. So the ZVIP program from NRCan provides up to 50%. There's now a charge on program from the province. So we're really excited to try to find trying to find a location that works so that your dollars are stretched even further. So there's a lot of excitement around applying to the federal or the provincial program. And I will be following up with the municipal staff because the provincial program is actually also open to private locations as well. So if you can think of a location in your community like a gas station that be accessible 24/7, they would be eligible to apply to this provincial funding. So we're just trying to get the word out there to just keep the balls rolling, keep people thinking about where would be a great location for electric vehicle charging, and then we try to apply and get funding so to stretch your funds as far as possible. Next slide, please. And now this is actually I always want to include this slide because it's actually really impactful because we're going to do a lot of work analyzing the municipal data, but a massive amount of energy is spent in the community. And so of all the municipal facilities that you have arenas and sewage treatment plants and a library and this lovely town hall. It only adds up to about 1%. At least the data will show. And across the board, we were finding this at all the townships that we're doing it. 1% of the emissions in the community is going to be corporate. 99% are going to be community. So your number one, I was just looking at the data that Manager Dean had put together. Your number one facility for greenhouse gas is your arena. Now, you think of an arena, you have to heat it and cool it at the same time. And so it's a big energy hog. So we'll put a lot of time and effort to try to maybe create a top 5 of what your energy buildings are. So going down the list, your works yards, town hall, your sewage treatment plants, fire halls, and things like that. So we have a lot of the data that the staff has put together. So we're going to create that as part of the baseline. Next slide, please. And this is actually a really interesting tool. So there's a free tool that an environmental consulting firm have put together, and it's the Municipal Energy and Emissions Database. And so this is what the baseline is going to look like, or this is about approximately what the proportions are going to be. So they've taken national and provincial data and downscaled it and they multiplied it by the population of Springwater Township. And this is actually pretty close. We've compared this to our numbers that we've done for the other townships. So just to give you a good idea of what your energy baseline is going to look like, it's basically kind of a large portion is going to be your facilities and a large portion is going to be on transportation. So your energy fleet, your snowplows and your trucks and your building department, all of that has a significant greenhouse gas impact. And of course, your facilities, as we were just mentioning, your arena, they also have energy impact as well. And waste is something that we try to reduce as much as possible because there is greenhouse gases affiliated with moving waste, treating it, processing, recycling, things like that. So this was a very exciting thing for me because it kind of gives you the broad picture of what is going on in the municipality and where areas where we're going to have to start and to try to reduce with targets and come up with a plan to achieve that. And the final slide, if you will, please. Yeah, so I just wanted to give you a snapshot of Township of Springwater is very fortunate that you only have one energy and electric provider. Some places have some little ones like Tay Newmarket. Wasaga Beach is still independent. Electra is in Barrie and Penisangwisheen. So again, super thanks to Manager Dean. Been super helpful to get authorization letter to get the Hydro One data for multiple years. And we've also got the Enbridge data. So we have the natural gas usage all across the township. Things like fuel oil and heating oil, which has been in the news a lot the last couple of weeks, that's a little bit beyond the scope because these small firms don't have staff available to kind of pull all the data. So even Mays Martin, which is based locally, they don't have the staff to be able to pull it. So we're basically kind of look at electricity and natural gas. And so wood, fire, and propane, things like that, we're not going to include at this time. So just so that we can kind of have an apples to apples comparison. So as we go, and we'll be able to track the data evenly, and so you're not adding data here and there. So I hope that wasn't very confusing. I apologize. So that's the update from the Sustainable Severn Sound Climate Change Project. We're really excited to put the baseline together. When we have that together, we're really going to going to want to share that and get the little piece of the puzzle of your milestone, achieve milestone 1. And next year is going to be a really big year for the township with the development of the climate change plan, which is really exciting. So thank you.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So you can see in front of you sort of the plan for heading into 2024. I just want to highlight, we're going to have a renewed strategic plan. That's where most of us in our team were today, is getting that off the ground. And we're going to continue on with the activities that you see here. We do want to work with your staff to determine a good path forward for things like Ore Lake and ways that we can serve you and your municipality better in our watershed. Next slide, please. Our invasive species program did just secure some external funding, so they're currently out doing some roadside mapping of Phragmites specifically, and we're going to continue to consult with our agriculture community through our Ag Advisory Committee and making sure that we know from their standpoint the important role that they're playing in land and water stewardship and where we can help with those pieces as well. So next slide, please. I know you all have in your package the ask this year in front of you. The Springwater portion that's in front of you, the total increase for 2023 being $11,246. I obviously won't read the rest of pieces of the slide. I'm sure you can read them yourselves. And those two pieces are the core and the Sustainable Severn Sound project. I think I'd leave it at that at this point. I imagine you have some questions you might want to ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. At this time, Council, I just ask for a mover and seconder so we can have the discussion on the floor. Councillor Alexander and Garwood, that the presentation from the Severn Sound Environmental Association SSEA regarding the 2024 budget request be received, and that the 2024 SSEA operating budget request in the amount of $95,090 representing Springwater's share be referred to the November 2023 budget session for further consideration. And at this time, I will open it up to the floor. Councillor Alexander.
So I don't per se have a question because I am quite aware of what's going on, but I just want to make a couple comments. I've been fortunate enough to sit on this board. I really knew nothing about it coming in. I am continuously impressed by this organization. They truly operate like a nonprofit. Every dollar counts. They have a tiny little office with 2 fridges, one of which is their lunch and the other which is all of their lab samples. So make sure you put your stuff in the right fridge. So they do a great job with controlling their budget. They've done amazing work with Ore Lake with us this summer. Julie reached out to me right away when the blue-green algae bloom became an issue and continuously kept us up to date. So I want to thank her very much for that. As well as giving Elmville the opportunity to pilot the stormwater monitoring project. I think that was great. And then just one last comment that I did find really interesting as I become involved in this is the support our local agricultural community has, the respect they have for the SSEA. You don't usually see that. Environmental organizations and agriculture don't often work hand in hand. And I've only heard very positive feedback about this organization from our ag community. So I just wanted to say great work.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
I'll make it quick because Councillor Alexander pretty much said what I was going to say. I spoke to 2 farmers today, actually, and I didn't even prompt the conversation about conservation authorities, and both of them said the exact same thing, how easily they worked with you and appreciated what you did. I certainly didn't solicit their opinion and they just said it to me, so it must mean something good. So thank you.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Again, just a quick comment, not a question. First, I wanted to thank Julie and John for being here this evening, and I wanted to also thank you for inviting us out during the monitoring project in Elmville. I think that was personally for myself, a great learning experience. And again, I know for other members as well that participated. Of course, SSEA covering the Elmville community. So I appreciate everything that you all do. And I fully support the initiatives you're working towards.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions from members? Not seeing any. The significant increase in the budget that we are seeing before us, can we highlight I would say, larger initiatives that are causing the increase?
Thank you, Your Worship. In terms of the larger items, it is So originally our budget this year, so you're looking at the percent increase as being significant of the 14-ish%. It was originally 24%. And that was because actually, I guess it's 12% this year. Last year, the board made the decision to use reserves to pay for operations. So that put us in a position where we carried forward a 14% increase. When we came forward with a 24%, our board asked us to work with our executive to reduce as much as we could. And we did that by doing things like we have permanently removed one position off of our staffing list. So that's gone completely now. We did things like that to get us down from 24 to the 12%. So basically it's a carryover of some of the bigger pieces of being IT. We implemented a pay grid, which we did not have before. We implemented pay equity, which we had not done before. So it's a carryover of the bigger pieces.
I'm not seeing any other questions. The resolution has been read. So all those in favor? And that has carried. And we do have the second portion, which is for mover and seconder for the sustainable severance sound request. So I have Councillor Alexander and Councillor Fisher that the 2024 SSEA sustainable severance sound request in the amount of $12,724 plus HST on the non-recoverable portion representing Springwater's share be referred to the November 22nd, 2023 budget session for further consideration. All those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you very much.
Your worship, may we add one thing we forgot to mention?
Absolutely.
John?
Just out of good luck, Enbridge has been offering up $10,000 to municipalities that have natural gas and are doing climate action. So we've been working with Manager Dean on getting that application in for Wednesday. So that will cover up to 50% of the cost incurred. So almost 50% of the sustainable severance sound fee will be covered by Enbridge, which is just free money. So we're very fortunate to get that. It doesn't happen all the time. So we'll take it when we can get it.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us. And at this time, I will call on Jody Player Delgado, CAO Delgado, and Adrian Graham and Evan Chen to make the presentation, please. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you. Members of council, Springwater staff, and Springwater residents. We're happy to be here this evening to speak about the Springwater Township Public Library Board's plans for 2024. My name is Adrian Graham, and I'm the chair of the Library Board. With me today for our presentation is Jody Player Delgado, our CEO, and Evan Chen, our Finance Committee Chair.
Next slide. Let me move up so you can hear me better. All right. I am happy to say that the Springwater Library staff are very proud of what we have accomplished so far in 2023. Most exciting, we came in first place for the TD Summer Reading Award for Best English Language Summer Reading Program in Canada. It was a unanimous decision. It also came with an $8,000 cash prize, which has been spent on goodies for our children's area, which we would not be able to purchase normally. So really enhancements to our children's area across all three branches. We've also been able to bring in lots of grants in the last year for the library. You may have heard that we recently received a grant of $57,000 and more from the Shoppers Foundation for Women's Health for period products. And this will be providing free products for our community. And we will be also working with Enville and District Food Bank, Shareware, and the local Native Friendship Centers to help us with this project. We recently finished our previous grant from the Canadian Community Resilient Fund, which was for $64,000, with 25% coming from our own reserves. And that was to improve furnishings in our Midhurst and Enville branch. So we were able to add new flexible shelving, accessible tables, so they go up and down depending on different heights, and modular seating areas that can also be cleaned. And once again, we received the Canada Student Job Grant for our summer student, as well as a mini grant from the International Dyslexia Association of Ontario for decodables in our branches. So these are phonics readers for young children to help them read better. Our library staff are very valued and are very busy in the greater library community. I was recently asked to join the board of directors for the Federation of Ontario Public Libraries, which is a provincial nonprofit organization to advocate for libraries across the province, as well as provide training for library staff and help with their communications. Our children and youth librarian is also on the Ontario Library Association Committee for Children and Youth, and she's been on that for several years. We finally were able to increase our outreach activities. So you probably saw the library around at the Midhurst Autumn Fest, Enville Fall Fair, Menacing and Mini Fest, Doors Open event, Tiny Family Fun Day, the Hillsdale CRA event, as well as the Springwater Farmers Market Enville. And we were able to do our first program guide again. And we've been back to full face-to-face programming, as well as maintaining some online programming. So our residents can access the library both in branch and attend programs and visit our digital branch 24/7. Another new initiative, which we are really excited about, is our seed library. So this is a great project where people can come in and borrow seeds in the spring and then go and plant them in their own gardens and bring back the seeds that they harvest in the fall. So we've had lots of people be really excited about that. Next slide, please, Renee. So everybody has been saying when they come into the libraries that the libraries are busy. So here is a sampling of library usage as of September 30th. And yes, we have been really busy. I mentioned that people were coming back to face for our programs. Last year, for the entire year, we had 39,549 people in the doors of our branches. As of the end of September, we had 38,963 with 3 months left to go. So we definitely will have beat that number by the end of the year. Same thing with circulation. We've had 63,852 physical items checked out. So that's not counting our use of online resources or ebooks. Our app is really popular. We've had 6,500 uses of it, and that's among the top in all of Simcoe County libraries that are using this app. People in Springwater also rely on our free Wi-Fi with 43,140 hits, and that's both in branch and of course in our parking lots, because you often drive by the Midhurst branch at night and see people sitting in the parking lot using our Wi-Fi. And I have to mention our award-winning summer reading program. We didn't think we could beat last year's numbers, and we did. We had 405 participants this year from all 3 branches, which is really nice to see it evening out among all the branches, who read 222,978 minutes in the summer alone.
Next slide, please. So as you know, Springwater is a growing community. We're now categorized as a medium-sized library system in the province. Of the 286 library systems in the province, there are more library systems which are smaller than us compared to the number which are larger. In fact, approximately 75% of the library systems in the province are smaller than our system. The Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sports compiles library statistics from the mandatory library surveys each year. They provide detailed reports which libraries use to determine where they compare to similar library systems. In our medium tier, which we're in, there are 27 libraries serving populations from 15,001 to 30,000 residents, and several of those with only 1 branch, which includes our neighbors in Midland, Wasaga Beach, and Collingwood. Our 2 branch comparators include Essa and East Gwillimbury, and King Township is the most similar to us with 3 branches in a rapidly growing community. And these numbers are from the 2022 annual library survey. Next slide, please. With our township's growth, we have added 1 full-time library staff member in the past 10 years. That was the addition of our children and youth librarian in 2022. We are ranked 19th out of 27 in full-time staff compared to similar library systems. We are ranked 22nd out of 27 in the number of staff per branch. Interestingly, many one-branch library systems have more staff than us, whereas our staff are spread among 3 branches. Next slide, please. However, in terms of programming, we are ranked number 1 in the amount of attendees at our programs last year, out of those 27 in our comparator group, due to our popular and national award-winning summer reading program and our online programs. Also, we rank 7th in the number of programs that we held overall. Next slide, please. When looking at operating support and expenditures, our library system is lower than the average from our comparators in both instances. There were several libraries in our medium group with total operating budgets over $2 million. Our library system is in the middle of the pack and at the low end when compared to library systems with more than 1 branch. In fact, there are libraries in the small medium library group, which is the group size below us, that have a larger budget than we do. Interestingly, one of which is our neighbor Clearview. Next slide, please. There have been numerous studies showing that libraries provide a good return on investment and are anchor tenants for downtowns. The latest research has been compiled by the Canadian Urban Institute, which found that for every $1 spent on libraries, approximately $6 is generated in community economic impact, a return of over 600%. This number is even more when you consider the impact of libraries on child and adult literacy, business development, mental and physical health, and culture. Our library system calculated or circulated almost $1.5 million in physical items so far in 2023. This is a savings to our population as they are able to access resources for a minimal amount on their taxes. And this figure is only for physical items, since it does not include the return from programs, ebooks, or other online resources. All the funds provided to the library go directly back to the community. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Adrian. So now I'll go over the fun part. So for the library's base budget, operating budget for year 2024 is, as you can see on the slides, about 1.06 million. And of that, the municipal portion is about 945,846. So just under 1 million. And the base budget for 2024 definitely has increased compared to previous year budgets. Reasons for that is a couple of factors. One, as you know, the economic climate we're in today, there's quite a high inflation. Everything just costs more. So in terms of the library, this means our books, our ebooks, our licensing fees, and even our insurance is higher cost this year than before. In addition to that, we have our staff salaries with their step increases, as well as their cost of living adjustments. Those two contribute to the increase in budget compared to previous years for 2024. Now you'll notice that also on the slides are a couple of program changes. There's the community librarian, as well as the strategic plan development. I'll get into those in the next couple of slides. For now, you just need to know that if we were to go ahead with those program changes, it would increase the library's budget to about 1.1 million, which means the municipality's portion will increase to about 1.02 million from $945,000. Next slide, please. All right, so community librarian. So what does this position entail? So this position requires somebody with a master's of library and information science degree. The reason for that is because this position is intended to be part of the library's leadership group. So what that means is that in the CEO's absence, they could be acting on their behalf. But at the same time, the main purpose is to liaison with our partner organizations, such as the BIA and the CRA, organize all outreach activities, as well as develop plans and analyze adult programming across the library systems. So currently what's happening is across the 3 branches, if somebody comes in with a certain outreach activity or event or certain request for adult programming, it gets handled by various staff across the 3 branches. With this position, we're hoping to streamline that and make it more efficient and having one person to be the oversight for those. At the same time, we're hoping that this position will be able to have a more comprehensive and high-level and centralized oversight of adult programming, which will allow us to have a more synergistic programming across all 3 branches versus having three different branches with 3 different staff members trying to coordinate and plan for those. And as you know, community librarians, as a community librarian, we're no longer restricted to just the 4 walls of the library. We're no longer just books. And as Jody has mentioned, we do offer a lot of services and resources to our residents outside of just books. So as a community librarian, this position really, if you take nothing away from this slide with all the information, is really to be able to make sure that we're able to reach the residents with all the different services that we have available, and of all ages and depending on which location they're at. Next slide, please. So strategic plan development. So as you know, our last strategic plan was developed back in 2018. And then in 2019, we had developed a master plan study with a consultant. And the board at that time was hoping to use that master plan study to develop our long-term strategic plan. Now, as you know, in 2020, we hit the pandemic. So that threw a wrench into our plans. So at that point, the library board felt it was more pertinent and more important to develop a short-term operation plan. And the reason for that is obviously the volatility and environment that we were operating in, as well as the restrictions that were in place at that time. So we were trying to figure out an operational plan to be able to provide the necessary services under the circumstances that we're in at that time. Now, post-pandemic, as you all know, we had the election, which means we had the opportunity to recruit new board members within the library board. And this brought along new strategic plan experiences, which means that the library board will be able to develop our own strategic plan going forward. And that's our plan for the next year or so. Our priority right now is to ask for a budget of $5,000. And those $5,000 is really just for incidentals, such as maybe calling a consultant for advice. Again, not necessarily to have the consultants develop the strategic plan for us, but simply for any advice we may have, get more information of best practices, and get more information of about standards, what's out there, what's new in the library world. So that's really what the incidentals are for. And at the same time, for the publication of the strategic plan and making sure once the strategic plan is completed, it's easily accessible and available to our residents. Next slide, please. So shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about the capital budget, sorry. There are a couple of pressing issues, renovation issues at the Elmville branch. Some we'll address in 2024 and some we're hoping to address in 2025. So in 2024, we're hoping to address the light fixtures. So currently within the Elmville branch, those light fixtures are quite old and the light bulbs themselves and everything else is basically obsolete. So if a fixture breaks, a bulb breaks, basically it's difficult, if not impossible, to find new parts. So what we need is we need new light fixtures, which then would use more environmentally friendly LEDs. And at the same time, we would install dimmer switches. This is based on accessibility reasons to have those dimmer switches within the library. We're also looking to repaint the upstairs area in 2024. The downstairs area was done in 2021. So right now the paint up in the upper area is flaking off and it is quite damaged. So we do need to have those touched up. All in all, between the light fixtures as well as repaint, it would cost about $60,000. And that will be drawn down from the library's own capital reserve funding. Looking forward into 2025, what we'll be looking at is replacing of some of the old shelving units. Those shelving units themselves are 35+ year old. They are breaking, so they do need to be replaced. We're also looking to replace the carpet in 2025. I don't know if you've been to Elmville branch recently, but if you take a peek around the circulation desk, you'll see the carpet's quite well down. There's even holes in it, so we do need to replace those. Next slide, please. Oh, thanks, Adrian. Yep.
So recent studies on public libraries in Canada state that public libraries should be recognized as national assets. Libraries provide critical supports to our community. Unlike neighboring municipalities, Springwater does not have a youth or a senior center or a multitude of recreational programming. Springwater Township Public Library provides recreational and educational resources for all ages. Our library system provides access to social services as many residents do not want to travel outside of the township. Our volunteer income tax program, vaccine clinics, partnerships with the Alzheimer's Society and South Georgian Bay Community Health Center, our early on programs, YMCA employment programs, and language programs for newcomers allow Springwater residents to access the supports they need in their own community. We are the only organization that provides this wide variety of services to our community, as well as doing so in a welcoming and a safe place for all to relax and learn without the needs to purchase anything. And with that, we conclude our presentation. Thank you for listening, and we welcome your questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. At this time, I'll just ask for a mover and seconder to get on the floor. I have Councillor Thompson and Moore that the presentation from the Springwater Public Library regarding the 2024 budget request be received, and that the 2024 library operating budget request in the net amount of $945,846 be referred to the November 22nd, 2023 budget session for further consideration. And at this time, Council, I can open it up to members. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you for your presentation. At the beginning of the year, I was pleased when the mayor appointed me to the library board. And just for the public's information, the library board operates with, or the library operates with an 8-person board that has been appointed by council. And within that board, there's a finance committee, which you're the chair of. Yeah. I have found the library to be very frugal and very conscientious of all tax dollars. And as you can see from the statistics that have been presented tonight, our library runs a very tight ship, and I'm proud to be part of that. And thank you for the great work that you do. When I got appointed to this position, I was really surprised to find that both roofs of the Elmvale and the Midhurst Library were leaking. I was really surprised to find that our staff were using their own personal vehicles to courier things from library to library and to run all of our outbound projects and activities. And again, many of our staff are here tonight. Great job. Hats off to you. Most of our board members are here tonight. You do an amazing job. I just would like to reiterate what an amazing library we have. Our library and staff this past year have been recognized locally. Our residents continuously reach out to me saying what an amazing job you do. Our library and staff this past year have been recognized provincially by the Ontario Library Association. Great job. And our library this last year has been recognized nationally with awards. So thank you for the great job that you do, and you have my full support.
Thank you. I did have Councillor Garwood and then Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just a few comments. I wanted to thank CEO Delgado and Adrian and Evan for coming out tonight and for providing us an overview of what you've been doing and what you are planning on doing in the future. Again, I wanted to congratulate the Springwater Library on their TD Summer Reading Award. That's incredible news. Specifically speaking about your program guide there, CEO Delgado. I have one at home, and it's something my family often references, so it's fantastic. And again, I wanted to thank all library staff and the board for supporting our local farmers market, for supporting our BIA in Elmvale, our Elmvale Community Recreation Association events. We actually have an event at the library in a couple of weeks, so fantastic again. And what I also wanted to thank was this past summer, the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee, which I sit on as the council representative through the county, had an opportunity to do a facility review of the Elmvale branch and highlighted a lot of the accessibility concerns and items that should be discussed over the coming years to ensure, again, that building and all of our buildings in Springwater remain accessible and friendly and welcoming for everybody. So thank you for opening your doors for that committee. And I know the group was excited about that. And again, something that was mentioned was, I believe it was Adrian had said something along the lines of how it provides a safe space for everyone and all of our residents in our community. So as Councillor Thompson mentioned, I fully support everything that the Springwater Public Library does for our community and continues to do, and you have my full support.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
I just had a question about the $60,000 for paint and light fixtures. The $60,000, I'm assuming, was based upon quotes that you received.
I'll direct that over to the panel.
Whoever wants to take it.
To you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Fisher. That would actually be a question for Manager Dean, as she was the one who did most of the costing on that issue.
And I'm just going to go to Director Radigan here.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Fisher. I can start. Based on some of our discussions, we did have some building facility condition assessments that were completed in, I may be incorrect with this, 2021 or 2022. And based on the figures provided in there, that is where Manager Dean would have come up with those figures. But I believe she did add inflation to those because costs have changed since the original building condition assessments were completed. Thank you.
Following Councillor Fisher.
Through to Director Radigan, I wonder, would it be possible to get new quotes for it? I do actually believe in putting LED lights in all of our facilities over time. I think it's actually a very cost-effective way to deal with environmental changes. I actually think it's a really smart thing to do, but I'm wondering if we could get more up-to-date figures on it for that and the painting.
Director Radigan. Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Councillor Fisher. That is something we can request Manager Dean to proceed with. I would caution going out for quotes if we do not have an approved budget, though. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just want to thank you for coming out. I find it very refreshing, to be quite frank, because in the past, in previous council even, it's just been the CAO that's come here. So it's very interesting and refreshing that the library board has taken the initiative to come out and support their CAO at this juncture during this budget deliberations for 2024 coming up. So I do thank you. It was very interesting. Some of the comments that were made, some of the awards that were presented, some of the hard work that our library staff have done. So I just wanted to say that I hope to see you back coming in future years, because it's very interesting when there's a bit of a different take, I guess, is the best thing I could say. Some of the points that you made were well taken. And with respect to where we sit on the spectrum, I find that a little bit interesting. We're a bit of a spread out area. So there are 3 libraries in Springwater Township, but I do kind of think it might be a little bit difficult to say that we have fewer library staff than a single library at a different location, given that libraries are basically based on how much they can offer as to how much staff can be there. And I think we do a pretty darn good job with the staff that we have. So I do want to thank you for coming out. And I certainly appreciate the fact that board members came out as well as library staff today during your presentation. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Just through you to anyone on the panel, actually, just going back to the $5,000 for your strat plan, what exactly are you hoping to achieve with it? I just, as Jody knows, I requested some information on the previous strat plans. We had one in 2019 for 43. We had one a few years earlier, 14-15 for 37, and a few more before that. I just have to wonder, did we not achieve what we were looking for in those strat plans, and what do you hope to achieve with this one?
You want to start?
And thank you. Maybe actually before you let council, I just at the will of council, there's 3 separate initiatives. So there's the program change 1 and 2. So if we wanted to deal with them all together, but we do have 3 separate resolutions, just as our previous service providers, whereby we had the base budget and then we had the additional. So we can do it all at once, or if council would rather wait, that would be the 3rd motion, is it's specific to the strategic plan as to whether it's included or not, but at your discretion.
Sorry, I'm not following anything.
So after earlier this evening, that when we've been receiving the delegations, some of them had a second component. So much like the SSEA had 2 components, the NBCA had 2 components. So this discussion here, the first one is dealing strictly with the base budget, or the 945,000. Then we move on secondly to discuss our strategic, or the strat plan, and also then the community librarian, all in separate motions. So it's completely up to council if we want to have one fulsome discussion.
I understand. I can wait. Sorry, I realize what you're saying.
So perfect. And my apologies. Deputy Cabral.
Oh.
Yes, again. My apologies. No. Yes, thank you, Councillor Alexander. I did have an A here.
Okay, so given what you just said, I'm gonna have a couple different comments, so I'm going to make sure I'm trying to follow them in the right spot. So first off, congratulations on the TD Summer reading program and the Shoppers Foundation for Women's Health grant. I think that's amazing work. You guys have done an incredible job with that. So job very well done. With respect to the recreational programming that the library does, do you work with the township staff? Because I do find some of the programming seems to overlap with what our Parks and Rec department does. And so I find that a bit confusing sometimes on some of the programs offered that we are also offering at the township level. And sometimes it's not incredibly efficient to have that overlap.
CEO Delgado.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Alexander. Yes, we do work with the recreation coordinator, manager, recreation, not sure her actual title. Unfortunately, we have not yet been able to work as closely as we would like due to differing schedules and workloads. We did work with her quite closely to arrange outreach for the summer camps. And then an example of a program that the library used to offer that is now offered by the township would be the babysitting course. And so that was then taken over by the township instead of the library because they were able to do more promotion for it basically and have room. We do hope to work better in the future because there are things that we can do better and there are things that the township can do better. And we do not want to have the duplication of service. It's not great for our residents. So that is something that is on our radar and we have been working towards it.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, through the chair to CEO Delgado, I think though that any of the library programming that I have seen and been involved in has run to capacity. So even if there is overlapping, if the library is running at capacity and the township's running at capacity, I don't see that as a duplication of services. I just see that as a need for services, and maybe we need somebody else offering that service too in our township because there's more need for it.
And maybe just for clarification, I think too, sometimes when there is a recreation yoga offered in the library, residents and even members of council, myself, don't know if it's the library putting it on or the township putting it on. I think that was, there is a partnership there, but it's not just always the space being provided. Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Cogna. Two questions, actually. First one through you to Director Radigan. Part of the thing here was increased in certain costs, and you have to forgive me, but I was under the impression, does the library look after its own insurance needs, or are those insurance needs covered by the township itself? Because if it's covered by the township itself, I don't understand how that would play into the library's operational expenses. So just the one question there, if you could.
Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Deputy Mayor Cabral. We do charge the library for insurance. They are part of our umbrella that is provided through BFL. And we do charge it to their budget. And part of the reasons is just the way we have to report to the ministry. We try to ensure that all costs associated with the library are reported as part of the library costs.
Okay, thank you. That kind of clears that up for me because I was under the impression that it was a township insurance policy, but it's apportioned towards their needs. The other one was with respect to the program change. Just a quick question. Have to wait on that?
Well, we don't. And again, it's to the discretion of council, but I thought just
real quick,
just to keep it.
Who looks after CAO work when you're gone right now? Because, you know, that's obviously been fulfilled for the last few years. Do staff take turns? Because it does provide them with a training opportunity as well. So question. Thank you.
CEO Delgado.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to the Deputy Mayor Cabral. Yes, I have several of my full-time staff that I consider my leadership team. Two of them have actually completed the Advanced Public Library Leadership course. And so if I am away for an extended vacation, for example, one of them would be person in charge, but it is always nice to have more staff that can do that in case one of them is also away or sick that day. And it's also just better for have a succession plan in place.
Thank you for that. Council, is there any other questions pertaining to the base budget, or sorry, the $945,000 portion, not the program changes at this time? Seeing none, so we have read the motion and it was moved by Councillor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Moore that the presentation be received and that the 2024 library operating base budget request in the net amount of $945,846 be referred to the November 22nd, 2023 budget session for further consideration. All those in favor? And that has carried. And council, we will now be moving on to the community librarian motion. May I have a mover and seconder for the community librarian program change? I have Councillor Thompson and Garwood that the program change the community librarian in the amount of $70,417 be referred to the 2022-2023 budget session for further consideration. I do have that on the floor. Is there any comments, questions from council? Councillor Fisher.
With this position, you just mentioned, Jody, that you have people in your management team, right? I guess my question is, does this not suffice right now to have that? Is it totally necessary to hire somebody for that component?
CEO Delgado.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Councillor Fisher. It is important to have more because also we do have 3 branches. And in this case, I'm going to speak about the Elmville and Midhurst branch. And we also need somebody who can be in charge at those branches if a problem arises. So it would also be acting as a branch manager because usually I have one person at the Elmville branch most of the time. And then I have somebody who goes back and forth, say on Mondays in Elmville and then on Fridays in Midhurst. So having full coverage every day of the week at the 2 main branches would be preferable.
Thank you. Councillor Alexander and Deputy.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So I do have a question. But I have a couple comments on this. I struggle with the need for a master's of library science for this position. When I'm looking at some of the duties with it, I don't necessarily know if that's necessary. And I'm assuming it's because of the master's of library science that the salary is where it's at, because obviously if you're bringing in someone with that level of education, there's going to be a higher level of a salary. One of my questions is last year, and again, last year was my first year on council, so maybe it wasn't the norm. The program changes were included in our budget binder with a justification of a page to 2 pages of why that program change was needed. So I'm wondering why it wasn't included this year, because it's much harder to approve a $70,000 position on 5 bullet points.
CEO Delgado.
No, that was through Mayor Coughlin to Councillor Alexander, thank you. The board did want to present our budget in a different manner this year. And so that was the reason that was not included. It was not presented exactly as how we wanted due to a glitch in the software system.
And I have Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And I have to admit, it's much along the same lines. And the reason I say that is you have some staff that have taken additional courses to become, I apologize, it wasn't a master's degree librarian. And that would be part of my thought process would be, given our library structure, you've got seasoned staff on hand that may be able to undertake this. Would there be opportunity to have an additional staff member added to the library and rely on one of your current staff members to undertake that role? So that would be my question. I mean, it may be a savings of only several thousand, or it could be $20,000 or $30,000. I don't know, but I think it's worth looking at because it does provide the coverage. It's coverage that's been provided in the past, and you do have staff on hand that are in a position to be able to do that and undertake that. So I would have to agree with Councillor Alexander that if it were to go forward, that would be something that I would hopefully like to see you possibly bring back, is another option that might be a little bit easier on the taxpayer.
I have Councillor Councillor Thompson, Garwood, Fisher.
During discussions on the library board that I was involved with, our library is growing. Just the numbers alone, like last year, about 40,000 patrons. This year, we're trending to over 50,000 patrons. And with the new hub coming on board, we need all the help we can get. I see this as a very needed position. It's going to help us today, and it's going to help us in the future. So I'm in favor of this program change.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. kind of stemming off of what Councillor Thompson had said, and I'm going to take a bit of a different approach than where others have gone here. When I think about the education required for the community librarian, the master's degree, and the rate that is associated with it, I think it's actually incredibly modest for various different positions. I understand in my current employer in the education field, far higher or similar education is required for similar dollar amounts. So I don't see an issue with that. But again, I continue to focus back on us being listed as 19th out of 27 different municipalities or libraries, as you noted. But I think we're also focusing on, when it comes to the community librarian, the coverage piece, the acting as the CEO in your absence, CEO Delgado. But there's far more to this than just a person that is going to cover you when you are away. We know that's already in place because we know there's an incredible team that already exists that supports our library. So can you maybe speak to a few of the specifics that community librarian would be doing? Again, I know it talks about outreach and liaison with different organizations and whatnot. Because again, I think the piece around the acting CEO is only a portion of it.
CEO Delgado.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to Councillor Garwood. First, I will talk about why we are asking for a master's degree in this position. And that is because the coursework in a master's degree provides skills and knowledge that is needed. For example, many master's programs now have courses on community-led programming. So breaking down how to go out, do community surveys, meet with community, work with community partners to bring them back into the library and to promote library services. Also teaches you how to use and leverage and teach others on new technology, because we know technology is changing every day. And the library is the one place in the community that people can come in, for example, and use our cricket machines. So going out then to the community with those machines, for example, also provides the foundational skills on ethics and values and more standards, strategic planning, the digital divide. And the digital divide, that's when some people have access to technology, to the internet, others don't. That would be part of the role of the community librarian, is to how do we erase that gap? These are all things that they would learn in the master's degree. And one of the reasons why we feel the community librarian is so important is we saw that this type of system-wide role worked. We implemented this in 2022 with our children and youth librarian, and we won a national award the first year we had it. So, and the reason we needed that librarian was because of that piecemeal programming, the lack of security in programs system-wide. So with the community librarian, they would be in charge of all the adult programs system-wide. So not just going out there and saying, okay, now we're going to do this craft, analyzing them, evaluating them, looking at what worked, what numbers we did, what does the community want? So really looking at this community-led idea. What does Springwater want from our library? I don't have the staff right now that can go out and do that. So that's what this community librarian can do. Go out, make the partnerships with the programs. Like right now, Councillor Garwood is working with me to set up things for the CRA. The BIA works with me. That should not be my role. That should be the role of a community librarian. I should be working on more higher level things. So in order, as we're growing, we need to add these more differentiated and more specialized positions to our library system, or else we will be left behind.
Thank you. I have Councillor Fisher next.
So I was just going to say, could you not look at training from within, training somebody to do that job and hiring somebody on for coverage? You know, as Mr. Thompson said, you know, the hub will be coming online. It won't be soon. It'll be in the next few years. You know, could you not plan for some sort of succession over the next few years so somebody grows into that role internally, and we can also save money throughout that time? Could that not be a possibility?
CEO Delgado.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to Councillor Fisher. That is a possibility, but without having that degree and all that education, you are starting at a large deficit, because it's really hard to teach the foundation and the theoretical knowledge when you're teaching practice. So you can teach the practice really easily, but you're only getting half of the position. So it wouldn't be ideal, and it could lead into problems. I know we will need new staff members when we do get the community hub, but then we will have to sort of train more. So then it also takes extra staff time to train more. Whereas if we get somebody with these requirements, they can hit the ground running right at the beginning.
Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just one more comment. On the bullet points, there were two organizations that this librarian was going to be reaching out to, one of them being the BIA and the other one being the CRA in Elmville, or maybe other CRAs throughout Springwater Township. What exactly is the role that the library would be playing with those two organizations who both have their own committees and their own agendas and their own terms of reference for things that they're going to be doing? So I just want to know how much time would be spent doing that. And I do know from previous experience that, I sat on the BIA myself and, we attended meetings. There were certain things that went forward, but I can't say I necessarily see that as a predominant role for those two organizations.
CEO Delgado.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to Deputy Mayor Cabral. I don't actually at the moment have a breakdown, say like 20% of the time on this, 30% of the time on this. That wouldn't be a large part of the role. But we could, we're working with the Elmville CRA. The Midhurst CRA has used the Midhurst branch for providing information on the soapbox derby, et cetera. That is something that we could grow. And then also, it's good to have the liaison because then you know what's happening. For example, the Elmville BIA has used the Elmville branch as a drop-off point for multiple things. And if we're there when the decisions are being made, it saves a lot of communication gaps later on. There's also many more organizations in Springwater that we don't have this relationship with. For example, I think there's 3 Lions clubs in Springwater now, with the Lioness moving to the Lions. So those are groups that we've worked with sporadically in the past, but we haven't had the staff to actually go and make a better relationship with them. So they're not doing something and we're not doing something at the same time. So we can be more cohesive with all the many organizations in our community.
And follow on Deputy Cabral, and then I have Councillors Garwood and Fisher.
Okay, thank you very much. And I do appreciate that response. I would appreciate next year for the next budget. And I've been a firm believer in this. And there were some very valid points that were brought up by all 3 of you folks with respect to libraries in relationship to our comparators that you used. However, I think when it comes down to any position that's being presented, a program change for a position, be it from staff or anybody else, used to be, we're busier, we're doing this, we're doing that. And as Councillor Alexander said, you 4 or 5 bullet points. For myself, I would like a lot more specifics, basically data driven, that makes it a lot easier for me as an individual, as well as a council member, to make an informed decision on that position too. So, and I think that's why I'm kind of saying, I'm not saying we couldn't use an additional staff member, but I do question a particular position that costs $100,000. If that's what we really need, that's one thing. If what we really need is an additional staff member, and then we can provide opportunity for senior library staff to help out with this in the short term, as Councillor Fisher said, for the next couple of years, that's a lot more palatable, I think, for me anyway, because it does serve to save some tax dollars. Not a whole lot, but some.
I have Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I think data is fantastic to rely upon, and I think that was presented on slide number 3 in tonight's presentation. 63,000 circulation, 1,400 computer use, 38,000 in the branch, 43,000 in Wi-Fi. I can continue on. But again, speaking around data, I look at the program list changes, and this is more of a comment in the entire budget, not just what's being presented here this evening. And the community service librarian presented at $70,417 as gross costs is actually the second lowest cost for a full-time position that is presented in our program change list this year. So I commend the library for being fiscally responsible.
And Councillor Fisher?
I guess what I'm hearing is a statement. I guess what I'm hearing and something I do struggle with, I'm hearing a lot about outreach, working with the BIA, working with CRAs. And I'll tell you one thing, despite what you may believe about me, I actually do like about your library. I like what you've done with dyslexia, right? I think it's fundamental for literacy. I think it's huge. I think I said this to you last year, right? I would like to see programs like that, literacy programs. Maybe I'm old school, but that's what I see a library as its main function as being. So when I'm looking at, and I do differ with Mr. Garwood's opinion here, I do see $70,000 as a lot of money. But I support hiring somebody at some point, but I would like to see them be more involved in frankly functions like this, dealing with dyslexia and reading and literacy. That's what I see the main function of a librarian as being. I struggle a little bit with the community outreach. I guess I have to ask myself, and again, maybe this is a bit of an old school way of thinking, but I see the library as being in that lane. I see this position as you're describing it, and maybe I'm hearing it wrong. It's really splintering off into different things that I don't know a library position should really be engaging in my opinion. So to recap, I like a lot of what you do. I would like to see more of that out of a librarian versus engaging in different. We have people inside of Springwater to do that, so I hope I've made myself clear there, guys.
Thank you. I have Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm going to address my question, please, through to Director Radigan. I think it's a good opportunity right now to speak to folks about what the effect of one program change is on the entire budget and the taxpayer. Because I think even while we look at all the program changes, and some are certainly more, say, legitimate than others, or more, very well needed than others, I think as a bit of education, it's an important point to equate one program change to the taxpayer and what that looks like for dollars. Thank you.
Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Councillor Moore. I'm just looking it up on our budget. And then if you could just give me 1 minute.
Yeah. And I get maybe while Director Radigan does find that, I do struggle with the position, and I think that it's I think when I was trying to figure out where it fit, whether it's inside the library or outside the library, and I think when we look at our comparators, whether it's 3 branches or to find that apples to apples with other communities is difficult because, like presented, we don't have senior centers, we don't have youth centers, we have libraries. So I respectfully disagree that the library's lane is books. I think that the library provides a massive service. And while I would love to hire a community liaison officer within the corporation and allow that person to work maybe with the library, that's not being proposed to us. This is being proposed to us. I think that our corporation is understaffed across the board, in my opinion. I think when people see master's degrees and librarian, it sounds like a very fancy, difficult job to get. So I'll stick with this job. I think that we do not have the people inside Springwater to offer this type of service to our residents. I think that there is a partnership with the library moving forward. And I think that even if we did have someone in-house to provide these services, we would likely be providing them through the library or at the library, because those are the hubs of our community. So I do see this as a well-used, utilized position. Like I said, if it was in front of me and it was someone within the corporation or someone within the library, I would prefer it here, because I think we need to grow in many different ways. And I see this as, often the separation between recreation and the library is a difficult one for me, because I do see it so intertwined. But I will be supporting the position moving forward. I think that it does offer a great service to our residents, and I think that it is one that we are going to be quickly growing into. So thank you for bringing it forward. At this time, I'm going to turn to Director Radigan with her hand up for the answer.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to members of council. So the program changes are outlined on page 48 and 49 of the budget book, and they're broken out based on township and service partner program changes. And each of the program changes outline the net tax impact. So for the library, you're looking at the community services librarian to have a net tax impact of 0.37%. But you do have to remember that is a 10-month salary and benefit impact, and the strategic plan to have a 0.03% impact, in total a 0.40% impact on our tax levy.
Thank you. Follow on, Councillor Moore.
Thank you. And so in dollars and sorry, Director Radigan. Yeah. So in dollars and cents, if we're the average person at the end of budget time and they say, well, your taxes are going to go up X percent, what does this represent?
Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'd have to go back and provide a calculation specific to that, but I'd be happy to do that for our next budget meeting.
Thank you. All right, Council, is there any further comments or questions on the community library? And I have Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Actually, we've had discussion here. I think from what I've been hearing, library could use somebody. However, I would like to propose an amendment that possibly we come back with two figures, one for the master's degree and one for someone to provide full-time service at the library as an option. So really, I'm looking for two numbers coming down the road, if that's possible.
Councillor Fisher?
I don't know who to direct this to, but what would the average salary be right now for a library employee? Does it differ very much? Just to get a gauge of what hiring somebody who doesn't have a master's would be.
And sorry, just for clarification, from like summer students to CEO?
No, sorry, a full-time employee right now. What would be the average? I understand there's going to be differences, but what would be the average salary of a full-time library employee presently?
I'm just going to look to the, CEO Delgado.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to Councillor Fisher.
And CEO Delgado, I do apologize. We're going to ask for a range.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't have those figures for you at the moment. I can work on them and hopefully have them for the Wednesday budget meeting. There have been several salary surveys done in the last couple of years, so those would be the basis of what I would look at for that.
Councillor Thompson.
Through the chair to Deputy Mayor Cabell, to assist the library and the library board, could you suggest a education level that you would be comfortable with as an option?
Well, to be quite honest with you, Councillor Thompson, that's not up to me. What I'm suggesting is that if the library could use additional staff and we can save $20,000 or $25,000, I don't know if we can, but even if it was $20,000. And I also want to point out that we're talking about the short term going forward. When the library, when the hub comes on board, we anticipate that there will be a change and there will be a new facility there. And at that time, I think it will be a larger facility. And at that time, I think we might be in a situation where having the CAO with a master's, as well as an additional person with a master's in the South End, would certainly serve what we're looking for at that stage. I'm just trying to, and I don't want to even use the word mediate. I'm trying to assist the library, and I'm trying to work within my duties as far as trying to be prudent and trying to be frugal for the taxpayer. It's that simple. And this is the first program change that's come forward. So every program change that moves ahead, the exact way that it's presented, it's going to be changed. So this is just an opportunity to, in my opinion, facilitate the library with additional staff and save a few bucks along the way. And that's just my opinion. I'm not saying that that's something that's everybody's going to buy into, but I do see opportunity down the road when the new library comes on board. Certainly at that time and that stage, it certainly would make sense. Thank you.
And I do have Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you through the mayor to Deputy Mayor Cabral. I will provide a recommendation procedurally, just to accommodate your amendment. So I would recommend that the motion before council be deferred to a future budget meeting, to be determined, based on when, CEO Delgado could, obtain the information. But I would, like to ask for clarification. If you could please reiterate the two options or points that you would like to see costing back on for me, please? Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Clerk Ainsworth. Basically, we have one figure here of $70,000 for a 10-month contract. So really what I'd like to see is the $70,000 for a 10-month contract equated to a 1 year, because that's what's going to happen in 2024. And I would also like to see, based on what the average or range might be, so that we can kind of look at an average of what an additional staff member would cost. And same idea, 10-month contract, and then also annualized for a 12-month period. And that's what I would be looking for as far as the amendment, and give an opportunity for council to then make a determination whether or not, I mean, if the difference is only $2,000 or $3,000, it's hardly worth the exercise. But, you know, a 0.4% increase for one program change, if we can shave even another 0.1% off of that, it does make sense to me. Oh, one more.
Deputy Cabral.
Yeah, and I would also like to clarify, because there seems to be a lot of misinformation out there with respect to the library. And I don't know about anybody else, but there's no appetite for closing any libraries down, as far as I am aware of. So if you are talking to any folks in the Elmville area in particular, you might let them know that, because there's a lot of folks out there that seem to think that the library is closing down, and that's just not factual.
And Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you through the mayor to CEO Delgado. Based on the information that the deputy mayor would be seeking, which budget meeting do you feel that the library might be able to come forward to? There is November 15th, November 20th, and November 22nd.
CEO Delgado.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Clerk Ainsworth. Just to be on the safe side, I would prefer November 20th, because if I have to reach out to colleagues for ranges of surveys of salary and surveys, and also if I have to reach out to the people in talent department here for the 10-month versus 12-month, that would give us a couple of extra days to get that information for you.
Thank you for that. So I do have a amendment by Deputy Cabral and seconded by Councillor Alexander. And it reads that staff, sorry, the amendment itself is that the motion before council be deferred to the November 20th budget meeting, and that staff return with the following: an annualized costing of the community librarian as presented, and a wage range for the additional staff within the library. And that's been added with it, without a master's of library science. Okay. All right, so we have an amendment on the floor, council. All those in favor? And that has carried, and we will go back to the main motion as it does stand. Is there any further discussion on the community librarian at this time? And seeing none, that the program change for the community librarian in the amount of, sorry, $70,417 be referred to the November 20th, 2022 budget session for further consideration as amended. Does that suffice, Clerk Amendment? Perfect. All those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you, council. We will now move on to the strategic plan. May I have a mover and seconder for the program change of this strategic plan? I have Councillor Garwood and Deputy Cabral that the program change for the strategic plan in the amount of $5,000 be referred to the November 22nd, 2020. We'll talk about that after budget session for further consideration. And I'm going to go, I have moved, I already haven't moved in second. Thank you, Councillor Fisher.
To really anyone on the panel, just going back to my previous question about what you were hoping to achieve for the $5,000 strat plan. Also, what you're hoping to achieve was not achieved in the previous strategic plans, and I gave the numbers there. But I think in the last decade, roughly, you've had 4, some of which were major. So essentially, what are you hoping to achieve for this strategic plan? And can you give me a bit of a costing in the $5,000?
Sorry.
Sure.
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Fisher. Yeah, I think the way that worked was with the new board. We had almost a complete changeover in our library board this time last year. We had a look back at the former strategic plans, and with new members in the board, looking at those, they were generally feasibility studies for the 3 locations in the library right now. But looking forward to the hub, we felt that we wanted to do some more planning around that in terms of sort of a reset going forward. We know we have got the three locations. One of them is very small. We know we've got Elmvale. We've had studies and the work that needs to be done there for things like accessibility. And we thought we really wanted to come back, have an examination of what happened before, and then have a look at what we think we would like to look at with the system going forward towards the hub, which is sort of being solidified as well, those plans. And really, that's why we thought with the $5,000, that's really to be able to have a couple of meetings. We'd like to involve staff, library staff in that as well. Maybe some consultation with the strategist, but not someone that we want to hire on full time, which was the big cost before. And then, of course, as Jody mentioned, just generally things like if we decide on something, just printing up costs for printing up things for the community. So it's incidental costs. I mean, we have a number of people on the board, myself included, who have strategic planning background, and we didn't think we needed to hire out to a professional at this stage, given with, as you've mentioned, the number of plans that we've had in the last decade. We thought we could build on those and utilize the people that we have on the board. And so $5,000 is basically incidentals.
Thank you. And my apologies, Chair Graham. I was going to say Chair Adrian, and I knew that was wrong. So thank you for that. Council Deputy Cabral.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor Coughlin, I want to thank you for that clarification, because the way it's kind of listed here, it looks like, you're going to spend $5,000, get someone to come in. But I'm happy to hear you have that kind of expertise on the board and you're willing to share it with the library, and that this $5,000 is really for, as you said, incidental costs along the way. So thank you.
Yeah, with the inflation these days, it may cover the cost of water at the meeting. So
I do have this returning for the November 22nd. Did you want it all at the same meeting? So you only needed to, I'm just throwing that out there. Okay, we'll leave it for the 22nd then, or do you want to see this come at the same time? I'm going to ask that if you're available, we'll refer it. Actually, no, this is for the final, right? Yeah, okay, we'll leave it as. Thank you. That the program change and strategic plan in the amount of $5,000 be referred to the November 22nd, 2023 budget session for further consideration. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. We've already done policing services. Yay. Thank you very much for a presentation tonight, and thank you for being here. Council, may I have a mover and seconder for the confirmation bylaw? I have Deputy Cabral and Councillor Alexander that bylaw 2023-106 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the special meeting held on November 13th listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? And that has carried. And may I have a mover and seconder for adjournment, please? I have Councillor Moore and Thompson that the special meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 8:10 p.m. to meet again in regular session on November 15th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you very much.